Chapter 37-33. Originally, he had been hunted down by demon Venerable Luo Ho many times. Although his Tao heart had not been destroyed, it had been clouded. This was not cowardice, but it had still affected him. Now, he had finally killed demon Venerable Luo Ho. Now, all of this had turned into motivation for him to move forward. Moreover, he had also seen the possibility of breaking through to the ninth realm. Although it was only a slight possibility, it was not like the original situation where there was almost no possibility of breaking through. As long as there was a possibility, there was a possibility that it could become a reality. The so-called cultivation itself represented going against the heavens and creating miracles. After grabbing demon Venerable Luo Ho's body into his inner world and watering the world tree, Yi Shiwen finally breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he directly broke into the Great Formation and collected the 99 energy balls. Although these 99 energy balls had been consumed in the process of conquering Absolute Heaven's Sacred Palace, it was still an immeasurable amount of wealth. Yi Shiwen would be able to use the universe creation palm unceasingly with these 99 energy balls, and his fighting prowess would certainly increase. However, it was still not enough to fight against half-step sovereigns. Yi Shiwen looked into his inner world. The world tree fruit was still slowly growing. As he watered more and more heavenly venerable blood essence, the world tree grew rapidly. This was because more than half of the blood essence was actually absorbed by the world tree. Therefore, the world tree fruit matured slower and slower, and it required more and more heavenly venerable blood essence. Of course, although it had not matured yet, the current world tree fruit was already much more effective than the previous ripe world tree fruit. However, the problem was that the world tree fruit of that level was no longer useful to him. Right now, he had to step into the ninth realm to be able to fight against half-step sovereigns. Even then, it wouldn't be easy. This was not only because of his cultivation reserves, but also because his comprehension needed to reach a whole new realm. Only then would he be able to match this kind of combat power. If it was in the past, he would definitely have no clue at all. However, it was different now. He had the Fortune God dynasty behind him, and this was the greatest benefit. In the past, he had to fumble his way forward by himself because there was no one to guide him along the way. But now, things were different. With his current status, he could naturally read all the ancient books and records left behind by the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch. Although at their level of cultivation, everyone had their own unique great Tao, Heavenly Monarch Fortune was too strong. Many of the ancient records he left behind were about the cultivation methods of half-step sovereign realm experts, as well as the comprehension of mental power. It could be said that the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch had done his best, but his descendants had failed to live up to his expectations. No one had ever cultivated to the half-step sovereign realm. However, this was also normal. Those who could cultivate to the half-step ruler realm were all super overlord. It was not something that could be achieved by cultivating step by step. In an era, there would be at most a few, and at least one or two. They were only slightly more powerful than hegemons. It was impossible to predict whether or not an expert of this level would appear. Even if the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch had laid out layers upon layers of backup plans, the truth was, after the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch disappeared, not a single half-step sovereign appeared. Even the experts who had touched upon this realm were as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. Even in recent times, only the middle heavenly venerables could be considered to have climbed to this level. In terms of peak experts, the current Fortune God dynasty was far inferior to the Fortune God dynasty when it was still in power. Now, Yi Shiwen was also qualified to come into contact with those top secret. When the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch was still in power, the middle heavenly venerables were already half-step sovereign realm experts. When the fortune creation heavenly monarch had conquered many ancient eras, the middle heavenly venerables had single-handedly suppressed all resistance from the outer domain. With their strength alone, they had protected the entire fortune world. Their might and tyrannical strength were far from what the current middle heavenly venerables could compare to. The other east, south, west, and north heavenly venerables had cultivations that were not inferior to the current middle heavenly venerables. In fact, there was no lack of experts of this level among the common people and the major domains. The number of peak heavenly venerables was several times greater than the current number. As for the other heavenly venerables, they could be said to be as many experts as there were clouds in the sky. Only with this kind of strength could the Fortune Divine Dynasty suppress the foreign lands and at the same time beat up the various ancient eras. It could be said that the Fortune Divine Dynasty had single-handedly suppressed many ancient eras until they couldn't breathe. Now, the strength of the lower and middle levels was not much different from the peak of the Fortune God Dynasty. However, the quality and quantity of the top experts had dropped by more than a level. To put it simply, the previous Middle Heavenly Venerables could become Middle Heavenly Venerables because he had already stepped into the half-step sovereign realm. That was how he could intimidate the other experts and stabilize his position as the Fortune God Dynasty's deputy emperor. Now, the Middle Heavenly Venerables wanted to become Middle Heavenly Venerables and condense the entire Fortune God Dynasty's destiny to help him step into the half-step sovereign realm in one fell swoop. This sequence alone was enough to explain a lot of things. The current situation could be said to have reached an unprecedented level. It was unknown whether Qin Zun could successfully escape the pursuit of the Half-Moon Immortal Lord. Even Yi Shiwen could not help but sigh. If the Fortune God Dynasty was still at its peak, how would those dying old fellows dare to have the idea of establishing the Fortune God Dynasty? They would not dare to have such an idea even if they had to endure until their death. If the Middle Heavenly Venerables were still around, the Fortune God Dynasty would not have fallen into such a terrible situation. It was just that the former Middle Heavenly Venerables and Fortune Heavenly Monarch had disappeared together. This was the reason why the Fortune God Dynasty could only defend and rarely took the initiative to attack the ancient eras. In the past, there was even a situation where the Moon City was captured. This was a great humiliation that they did not even dare to think about in the past. "Forget it, let's go back first and prepare for the war," Yi Shiwen said. At this time, it could be said that they had done everything they could. In this war, the Fortune God Dynasty suffered heavy losses, and many ancient eras were completely annihilated. Even in a war like the fall of the Moon City, there were not so many casualties on both sides. In normal times, such a level of war and losses would be enough for both sides to go back and recuperate for a long time. But for now, all of this was just a prelude. Everything had just begun. The calm before the storm. If Qin Zun succeeded, it would be fine. But if he failed, the consequences would be unimaginable. Yi Shiwen was not used to placing his hopes on others. He only believed in everything that he could control. Compared to the cautiousness he had when he entered, it was much easier to leave. Along the way, Yi Shiwen carefully searched and did not encounter the Half-Moon Immortal Monarch again. Clearly, the Half-Moon Immortal Monarch had been lured away by Qin Zun. Judging from the strength that Qin Zun had displayed, he might not be weaker than the Half-Moon Immortal Monarch. If both sides were to fight, it was unknown how long it would take to determine the victor. After leaving the tomb, Yi Shiwen did not linger and directly flew in the direction of the Fortune God realm. Compared to when he left, Yi Shiwen's current strength was much more tyrannical. In less than half a month, he had already returned to the edge of the Fortune realm and felt the existence of the martial epic's heavenly Tao. After flying past the 10 great divine cities, Yi Shiwen directly returned to the Fortune God realm. This was another half a month's time, and he had already returned to the Fortune God realm. At this time, the entire Fortune God realm had fallen into a perilous situation. As the backbone of the Fortune God dynasty, the Middle Heavenly Master had suddenly returned from the ancient era and announced that he was going into closed-door cultivation. At the same time, the other supremacy of the Fortune God dynasty, the West Heavenly Master, also announced that he was going into closed-door cultivation. This news had just been announced, and it caused a huge uproar. In fact, most people did not know that the Middle Heavenly Master had left. Of those who knew that the Middle Heavenly Master had left, only a small portion knew what the Middle Heavenly Master was doing. For most people, they suddenly heard that something had happened to the Middle Heavenly Master. Especially after that, the news that the Middle Heavenly Master was severely injured spread like wildfire. Very quickly, the news spread to all the emperors and heavenly venerables of the Fortune God dynasty. Even many quasi-emperors had heard of it. One could imagine the shock caused by this news. No one knew what had happened and how it had turned out like this. In their hearts, the Middle Heavenly Master was the stabilizing force. Even when he was still the Eastern Heavenly Master, his name had already spread far and wide. Now that he had become a Middle Heavenly Master, for a time all the experts in the world fell into a state of panic. Subsequently, a Middle Heavenly Master's decree came out from the Fortune God capital, adding fuel to the fire in this strange situation. In an instant, everyone questioned what had happened to make the Middle Heavenly Master issue such an order. That was the Middle Heavenly Master's order. Before he came out of seclusion, the entire Fortune God dynasty's East Heavenly Master was the supreme ruler. Seeing the East Heavenly Master was the same as seeing him, and everyone had to listen to the East Heavenly Master's orders. The moment this order came out, everyone was in an uproar. What the hell was going on? Many people suspected what kind of injuries the Middle Heavenly Master had suffered to the extent that he was unable to control the situation and needed the East Heavenly Master to take over the Middle Heavenly Master's authority. In particular, many people knew that even if the Middle Heavenly Master was injured and needed to go into seclusion, it didn't matter. The current situation could be considered stable, and he didn't need to show himself. There were naturally subordinates loyal to him to manage the central region and even the Fortune God dynasty's affairs. Moreover, there were supremes guarding the various regions and divine cities, and they could naturally maintain the peace of the region. There was no need for him to take the extra step to issue such an order. What had happened? Chapter 37-34. Many people had doubts in their hearts. What exactly happened? In the eyes of many ambitious people, this was simply a cover-up. Soon, the news of the Middle Heavenly Venerate being severely injured spread throughout the entire Fortune Divine dynasty. In particular, this time, the Western Heavenly Venerate was brought along, making this matter even more believable. In many people's opinion, the Middle Heavenly Venerate should have led an army to conquer the ancient epoch but failed. Now, it was clear that he suffered a backlash. To many experts loyal to the Fortune Divine dynasty, this was like a bolt from the blue. To many ambitious people, this was an opportunity. Fortunately, the Southern and Northern Heavenly Venerates were there. Otherwise, it would not be as simple as rumors. Many people knew that many civilian factions were not satisfied with the Fortune Divine dynasty. This time, even if they did not rebel, they would at least reach a new agreement with the Fortune Divine dynasty and obtain more benefit. However, because many people did not know what exactly happened, they could only bide their time. This time, the Middle Heavenly Venerate, the Eastern Heavenly Venerate, and the Western Heavenly Venerate personally went to the ancient epoch. The news soon reached the high-ranked Heavenly Venerates' ears. Now they truly understood why the three Heavenly Venerates went out together. They were even more shocked. This news was like a huge wave crashing into their hearts. The martial epoch was clearly in a glorious and flourishing era, but it was actually going to end. Although it was only a possibility, when they thought of several half-step sovereign experts besieging the martial epoch's heavenly Tao, many people only felt despair. If it were them, Dealing with any one of the three heavenly venerates would result in total annihilation. What more when several half-step sovereign experts personally made a move? Such a consequence was simply unimaginable. As peak experts from the martial epoch, they had naturally merged with the martial epoch long ago. The martial epoch's collapse would be a great disaster for them. Although most heavenly venerates could guarantee that they would not fall during the martial epoch's collapse, they would suffer a backlash that would cause their cultivation to fall. Right now, their cultivation had not even reached the limit, yet they were already falling. Furthermore, after the great Tao collapsed, it would be very difficult for them to cultivate, or rather, it would be very difficult for them to advance further. This was something they absolutely could not accept. Furthermore, now that the item fell into the half-moon immortal lord's hands, he would definitely lead a large number of experts to destroy the martial epoch. The Fortune God dynasty indeed needed a leader in the current martial epoch. However, why the Eastern Heavenly Venerate? This was what everyone could not understand. Although Yi Shiwen was now an Eastern Heavenly Venerate and was one of the few primes of the Fortune Divine Dynasty, he was still the Heavenly Tao of the Heavenly Venerate. However, among all the Supreme Beings, his qualifications were the lowest, and his strength was also the weakest. This was something that almost everyone knew. Of the Yi of Tao of Heaven, of the primes, he the Tao of all of the divine dynasty. Everyone of the divine the heavens the venerates, of the Hevoff of the masters of the divine realm. The of the divine dynasty, the Hevoff of the Hevoff the was. Normally, this would have been fine. After all, everyone knew that the East Empyrean and the Middle Empyrean had a special relationship. The East Empyrean was the Middle Empyrean's most powerful supporter. When the Middle Empyrean was unable to manage matters, it was normal for the East Empyrean to manage matters. This was a huge matter that concerned the survival of the entire Fortune Divine Dynasty and even the martial epoch. The Middle Heavenly Venerate could not be allowed to throw a tantrum anymore. This was a huge matter that concerned the survival of the entire Fortune Divine Dynasty and even the martial epoch. The Middle Heavenly Venerate could not be allowed to throw a tantrum anymore. Even if it was the decree of a Middle Heavenly Venerate. The current Middle Heavenly Venerate was not like the previous Heavenly Venerates, who possessed absolute authority that no one dared to resist. For a time, undercurrents surged among the many of the high-ranked Heavenly Venerates, slowly forming an undercurrent that opposed Yi Shiwen. In an extremely spacious restaurant in the divine capital of Fortune, a young man in a green robe was leaning against the window. His eyes were looking into the sky, and his brows were furrowed from time to time. Do you guys think that the Middle Heavenly Venerate's injuries are serious or not? You've heard the news as well. I heard that something happened during the ancient epoch's expedition. Even the Western Heavenly Venerate was injured. Only the Eastern Heavenly Venerate is fine. Why do I have a feeling that a storm is brewing? Many things are revealing a sense that something is wrong. Many voices entered the young man's ears. Those who were able to dine in this restaurant were all famous people in the Fortune Divine capital, and the dishes they ate were rare treasures like dragon liver and phoenix marrow. However, to this youth, these people's levels were too low. They did not know that the person they were discussing was right in front of them. Suddenly, a figure appeared out of nowhere and half knelt in front of these people. My lord! Many people were startled by the sudden appearance of this figure. They were already famous figures in the Fortune Divine capital. Every single one of them was a god king, but when this person appeared, they actually didn't sense anything at all. The most frightening thing was that such a person had to half kneel in front of this seemingly ordinary young man. For cultivators like them, only when the difference in status between the two parties was as great as the distance between the heaven and the earth would they perform such a formal greeting. Ordinary fellow Taoists would at most bow and greet each other. Well, you're here. Yi Shiwen glanced at the newcomer. It was the butterfly sovereign, the disciple of the war lord. The two could be considered old acquaintances, and they could still be called friends in the past. However, the difference in cultivation now was like heaven and earth. With his current status, although the butterfly sovereign had made a lot of progress over the years and had already entered the fourth realm of the Emperor Lord, the gap between them was still too big. "Master heard that you're back, my lord, and immediately came out," said the butterfly sovereign. "All right, lead the way," said Yi Shiwen. After returning to the Fortune Divine dynasty, he immediately went to the Fortune Divine capital and did not return to the eastern region. Currently, the eastern region was still peaceful, and it was not a big deal. However, the real trouble was in the Fortune Divine capital. This was the core of the entire Fortune realm. If anything happened here, it would immediately be reflected back to the entire Fortune realm, and even the martial epoch. Then, both of them disappeared from this restaurant. Everyone held their breath and focused their attention without the need for anyone else to explain. It was obvious that the young man sitting beside them was a terrifying existence that they did not know about. They did not know which big shot had been sitting here. Could it be the Emperor? Someone asked cautiously. Perhaps. Many people felt dizzy. Although there were many Emperor Lords in the Fortune Divine capital, and there seemed to be a lot of them, in reality they were powerhouses who lived on a different level, and they would not have any interaction with them. But now, it was very likely that they had brushed shoulders with an Emperor Lord, and this was shocking to them. Moreover, they would never know that the person sitting there was not an Emperor Lord, but a powerful heavenly venerate, and the one kneeling there was the high and mighty Emperor Lord that they thought to be. In reality, the limit of their imagination was actually the Emperor Lord, and the heavenly venerate was almost unimaginable and extravagant. Yi Shiwen and the Butterfly Sovereign soon arrived at the War Sovereign's residence. The Middle Heavenly Venerate and the others had returned in advance, and they had obviously spread the news beforehand. He wanted to know how the situation had developed. Looking for the War Sovereign was undoubtedly the fastest way to find out. In the reception hall of the War Sovereign's residence, Yi Shiwen and the War Sovereign sat cross-legged on a cloud bed. "East Heavenly Venerate, I just heard about this matter from the Middle Heavenly Venerate. I didn't expect it to be so dangerous this time, and we even encountered a half-step sovereign. If it weren't for you, East Heavenly Venerate, I'm afraid the entire army would have been wiped out," said the War Sovereign. When he spoke, his face was full of emotion, and he almost couldn't believe it. What kind of person was a half-step sovereign? He had seen it before. In his early years, he had followed the Fortune Divine Lord to battle everywhere. At that time, he had just become an emperor. Although he was already a high-level official of the Fortune Divine dynasty, he was insignificant compared to a half-step sovereign. At that time, the Middle Heavenly Venerate was truly full of vigor, and he could suppress the rebellion of the world with one hand, let alone the Fortune Divine Lord, who was above him. His opponents were some ancient existences that had existed for countless ancient eras, and they could not be mentioned in the same breath as the present. However, it was precisely because he had seen it that he knew how terrifying a half-step sovereign was. This time, if it weren't for Yi Shiwen, the entire army might not have been wiped out in those ancient eras, but in the Fortune Divine dynasty. The situation this time is indeed dangerous. Yi Shiwen nodded and said, if he hadn't experienced it personally, it would have been very difficult to have a deep understanding of it, especially for him. The Middle Heavenly Venerate and the others had encountered disaster because they had encountered the Half-Moon Immortal Lord, but Yi Shiwen was far from that simple. He had also encountered several life and death battles, and each one was extremely dangerous. Don't be fooled by his smooth sailing. In fact, if there had been a single mistake in the middle, he would have been dead. This time, before the Middle Heavenly Venerate went into seclusion, he issued a decree that in the future, the Middle Heavenly Venerate residents will also listen to your orders, and the entire Fortune Divine Dynasty's resources will be allocated by you, said the war sovereign as he stared at Yi Shiwen. "There is only one purpose, and that is to win this war. We can't afford to lose." Chapter 37-35. There is only one goal, and that is to win this war. We can't afford to lose. The war venerable stared at Yi Shiwen. At his level, he was already in the upper echelons of the Fortune Divine dynasty. Aside from some top secrets, he was qualified to know all the secret. Naturally, he knew that they had no way out. If they failed, the consequences would be unimaginable. Even heavenly venerables like them might die. This was not an ordinary apocalypse, the replacement of the epic. Instead, it was the joint attack of those ancient epics. If the martial epic fell, without the protection of the martial epic's heavenly will, how could they resist those strong half-step sovereigns? They would probably be killed. Peak experts like Yi Shiwen and middle heavenly venerables might have a chance to escape, but ordinary heavenly venerables like him might die a miserable death. This was too common in the past eras. Not all the people from the original eras could survive after the Great Apocalypse. Most eras didn't even have a chance to catch their breath before they were destroyed. Why? It was because many ancient eras had participated in the final gluttonous feast, joining the tide of carving up. If they couldn't resist, they would be completely destroyed, not even giving them a chance to catch their breath. The struggle for an era was cruel. Only those who were unimaginably strong could survive. Moreover, several half-step sovereigns were involved. The situation was even worse. If they wanted to survive, the only way was to stop them from killing the heavenly will. As long as the heavenly will existed, they would be protected by the heavenly will. Even the half-step sovereigns from the ancient eras would be suppressed here. This was their ultimate backer. This time, I don't have full confidence. I can only say that I'll do my best and leave the rest to fate, Yi Shiwen said. He admitted that he didn't have full confidence. This was his magnanimity. He wasn't being forced or cowardly. Although he didn't have full confidence, he would do his best. This was just acknowledging the strength of the half-moon immortal lord and the others. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen looked into the distance. He opened his heavenly eye and saw through the layers of the void and the enchantments. Soon, a scene appeared in front of him. It was a boundless black cloud. Hidden within these black clouds were experts after expert. God-kings, quasi-emperors, emperor-monarchs. The number of experts was unimaginable. There were even many heavenly venerables hidden within. It was extremely noisy, and the whistling sounds shook the heavens and earth. However, what truly made Yi Shiwen frown was the fact that these were foreign experts and foreign armies. Moreover, they were acting so arrogantly outside the Fortune Divine capital. With a wave of his hand, an image appeared in front of the two of them. He asked, "What's going on?" These foreign troops actually dared to cause a ruckus outside the Fortune Divine capital? Are they tired of living, or are you all crazy? As the saying goes, how can one allow others to snore beside one's bed? Moreover, the Fortune Divine capital was the core of the Fortune Divine dynasty. It was hard to imagine how many experts there were in the Fortune Divine capital. If he gathered an army, he could destroy a few superpowers in a matter of minutes. It could be said that for the Fortune Divine dynasty, it was a great humiliation for them to be invaded to this extent. What was the difference between this and being captured and then slapped in the face? Moreover, these foreign experts were aware of how dangerous the Fortune Divine capital was. Unless all the heavenly venerables of the world joined forces to resist the Fortune Divine capital, they wouldn't be able to invade the Fortune Divine capital. Otherwise, they would be courting death if they dared to approach. Among the 5 major territories of the Fortune Divine dynasty, only the Central Territory had not experienced the flames of war. Therefore, there were more experts in the Central Territory, and their strength was also more tyrannical. Any army that invaded the Central Territory would undoubtedly die. It was simply courting death. There was no need to say much. A bitter smile appeared on the war elder's face. These people are here to welcome the return of the Chaos Overlord. You also know that even if we suppress it with all our strength, we won't be able to suppress it for long. How dare they come here to welcome the return of the Chaos Overlord? Why? Are all the heavenly venerables of the Central Territory dead? Yi Shiwen sneered and asked rhetorically. In his opinion, these foreign experts were simply riding on their necks and taking a dump. There is a foreign peak heavenly venerables leading the team. No one on our side can fight against such an existence. The heavenly venerables of the other Central Territory are also unwilling to completely offend the Chaos Overlord. In the past, the Chaos Overlord was sealed and suppressed, so it didn't matter. But now that the Chaos Overlord is obviously coming out, they naturally don't want to fight to the death with the Chaos Overlord like this. That is not in line with their interests, said the War Elder. Not in line with their interests? Is it the same as the last time when they let the foreign army invade the Fortune Divine capital? Yi Shiwen said with a sneer. Since none of them can afford to offend the Chaos Overlord, it doesn't matter. I'm not afraid of him. Anyway, I have already offended him to death. Other people were afraid of the Chaos Overlord, but they were also unwilling to offend the Chaos Overlord. That was because they were afraid that the Chaos Overlord would find trouble with them after coming out. However, it didn't matter to him. In any case, he had already offended the Chaos Overlord. He had killed his incarnation and his direct disciple. There was no longer any room for reconciliation between the two sides. Once the Chaos Overlord appeared, there would definitely be a huge battle. At this time, the War Elder suddenly remembered that there were indeed countless grievances between Yi Shiwen and the Chaos Overlord. With Yi Shiwen's character, he was also indomitable. He was not afraid, nor was he afraid. I'm going to drive them away. They really don't want to live. Yi Shiwen only said to drive them away. He didn't intend to kill them all. If it were in the past, he would definitely kill them all because at that time, the foreign experts were his life and death enemies. If the foreign experts didn't die, the one who died in the end was likely to be him. But now it was different. He had set his sights further. This was because his status was different and his horizons were also different. Just like in the myriad heavens, he didn't want to annihilate all non-human races. It was unnecessary, and at the same time, it was also against the natural order. Just like in the Fortune realm, the Fortune heavenly monarch used to have an absolute advantage, but he didn't annihilate the foreign experts. Annihilating one or two races and annihilating the entire foreign experts were not the same concept. Moreover, now was a troubled time. When the ancient era attacked, the foreign experts couldn't just stand by and watch. When the time came, they would inevitably become their helpers. This was a matter of the entire martial epoch. It was definitely not just a matter of the martial epoch. Yi Shiwen acted decisively. He closed his eyes and opened them again. He had already appeared in front of the foreign experts outside the Fortune Divine capital. Yi Shiwen didn't hide his aura because there was no need. Suddenly, the terrifying aura that could topple mountains and overturn seas swept across the entire foreign expert. Countless foreign experts knelt down. Whether it was divine kings, quasi-emperors, or even emperors, in the face of such violent power, they couldn't fight back at all. They were not a match at all. Even the heavenly venerables trembled. Yi Shiwen was already at the end of the endless heavenly venerables path. He looked down at them coldly. Eastern heavenly venerate, what are you doing? At this moment, several heavenly venerables flew out from this army. They belonged to different races, but they were all equally terrifying. However, under Yi Shiwen's pressure, they also felt incomparably stifled. And among them, the leader was a powerful ferocious beast with peak heavenly venerate cultivation. However, this ferocious beast's hair and beard were all white. Clearly, it was very old, and its body exuded the aura of time. Life and death were no longer a problem for heavenly venerate level foreign experts. They had already seen through life and death. Naturally, the older they were, the more tyrannical they were. No wonder this army could cause the entire Fortune Divine capital to be helpless. With such a peak Heavenly Venerate overseeing it, even if the Southern Heavenly Venerate or the Northern Heavenly Venerate rushed over, they would find it very troublesome. Unless it was a Middle Heavenly Venerate or an expert like him, the Southern Heavenly Venerate, Western Heavenly Venerate, and Northern Heavenly Venerate would only be on par with this ferocious beast. Only by borrowing the power of the martial epoch on their territory could they defeat such a powerful figure. Back then, Yi Shiwen had used the Eastern Heavenly Venerate seal to contend with a peak Heavenly Venerate, let alone peak Heavenly Venerate powerhouses like the Southern Heavenly Venerate and the Northern Heavenly Venerate. In their territory, they could even contend with powerful existences like the Middle Heavenly Venerate. This was the blessing of the Heavenly Tao for people like them. Who gave you the guts? You actually dare to come here? Aren't you afraid of death? Yi Shiwen said loftily. Eastern Heavenly Venerate, don't be too arrogant. Do you think we don't know that the Middle Heavenly Venerates and the Western Heavenly Venerates have been severely injured? Many other Heavenly Venerates have also died. Now that our ruler is about to appear, it's uncertain who will occupy the Fortune Divine capital. The wheel of fortune turns, and the Emperor takes his turn. This year, it's our turn to rule everything. At this time, only he dared to speak to Yi Shiwen like this. The others were intimidated by Yi Shiwen. Just the terrifying aura that leaked from Yi Shiwen's body made them understand that they were far inferior to Yi Shiwen. It seems that you want to refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Yi Shiwen had no intention of talking nonsense with the other party. Eastern Heavenly Venerate, don't be too arrogant. Do you really think that you can be compared with a peak Heavenly Venerate? I'm not an incarnation. You can't do anything to me. This peak Heavenly Venerate ferocious beast clearly knew that Yi Shiwen had killed the chaotic overlord's incarnation. He thought that he had grasped all of Yi Shiwen's secrets. Oh? Then let's give it a try. Yi Shiwen raised his eyebrows and said. Chapter 37-36. This foreign peak Heavenly Master was arrogant. Now that the Middle Heavenly Master and Western Heavenly Master were seriously injured, they would not be able to deal with him. Otherwise, if he dared to show off here, he would be taken down by the Middle Heavenly Master in minutes. The strength of the Middle Heavenly Master had already spread to the foreign territories. Even the people in the foreign territories knew that the Middle Heavenly Master was above the ordinary peak Heavenly Master. However, Yi Shiwen was different. Although he was the Eastern Heavenly Venerate, to a large extent, it was because those old fellows had lost their qualifications to take the top positions in those incidents. Therefore, a junior like him had taken advantage of the loopholes. In the eyes of many people, Yi Shiwen was not a powerful figure. In his territory in the Eastern region, he naturally held the title of Eastern Heavenly Master with the blessing of the heavens. However, as long as he left the Eastern region, what did he count for? In the territory of the Central region, he could not receive any blessing from the heavens. After all, he was not a Middle Heavenly Master. This was the fundamental reason why he dared to be so arrogant. He was also an overlord in the foreign territories. His status was not inferior to the North, South, East, and West Heavenly Masters. This was also the fundamental reason why the Heavenly Masters of the Central region were not willing to make a move. Not to mention that they would offend the Chaos Overlord. Even if they made a move, they might not be a match for this foreign peak Heavenly Master. Instead, they might be beaten away. Heavenly Master experts would not easily make a move, especially in such a battle where they knew they would lose miserably. If they went out, it would be equivalent to making a fool of themselves in front of the entire Central region. Naturally, they were not willing to do such a thing. That was why he was so fearless. What is that? Is the Eastern Heavenly Master fighting the foreign troops? It seems to be right. Is the Eastern Heavenly Master also back? I heard that he seems to have stayed in the chaos because of other matters. There will be a big battle. Although the Eastern Heavenly Master is a new Supreme, he has also killed a peak Heavenly Master. He is not someone to be underestimated. It's going to be another fierce battle. At this time, the Heavenly Masters of the Central Region saw the situation here. After all, Yi Shiwen released his aura without the slightest bit of concealment. Eastern Heavenly Master, don't be too arrogant. Do you really think you can compare with a peak Heavenly Master? I am not an incarnation. You can't do anything to me. Oh? Why don't you give it a try? Yi Shiwen raised his brows and said. As he spoke, he moved. He grabbed the air with his hand as countless laws appeared. In an instant they turned into a huge net. Countless laws interweaved together, looking extremely terrifying. It was as though the entire heavenly Tao was sucked into it. The expression of the peak, heavenly venerate foreign life form changed. He felt a great sense of danger. This was originally impossible. With his cultivation, even if he encountered a middle heavenly venerate, he wouldn't feel such a strong sense of danger. In a thousandth of a second, he chose to believe in his intuition. This intuition had saved him at least hundreds of times. He hurriedly tried to retreat to avoid this huge net. You only want to leave now? It's too late. Yi Shiwen waved his hand, and the large net instantly caught the pinnacle heavenly venerable foreign creature. This pinnacle heavenly venerable foreign life form didn't even have a way to escape. He probably never thought that things would end up like this. He couldn't even resist. He tried to struggle, and an unimaginable fluctuation of laws erupted from his body. It turned into a terrifying radiance that swept in all directions, creating a hurricane. However, it was of no use. He was caught in midair by the large net and smashed into the boundless galaxy, directly smashing a star into pieces. This pinnacle heavenly venerable foreign life form spat out a mouthful of blood. Almost all the bones in his body were broken. However, this wasn't the end. Rumble! Loud rumbling sounds echoed. This pinnacle heavenly venerable foreign life form was like a ball in the net, constantly smashing into the stars. All the heavenly venerates watching the battle fell silent when they saw this scene. The fight had already reached such a stage. What the hell was he doing? Was he crazy? Couldn't he just have fun? All the heavenly venerates couldn't help but take a deep breath. They felt cold sweat all over their bodies. They originally thought that a tragic battle was bound to break out. No matter how one looked at it, it was enough to be a tragic battle. The other party was a pinnacle heavenly venerable foreign life form. There were very few who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Those who dared to say that they could suppress him were probably the southern heavenly venerates and the northern heavenly venerate. The western heavenly venerates and the middle heavenly venerates were already seriously injured and in seclusion. Yi Shiwen couldn't be underestimated either. He had the strength to defeat and even kill the incarnation of the Chaos Overlord. He was definitely not a weakling. But from the very beginning, the intense battle that they were looking forward to had turned into a one-sided suppression. It wasn't the pinnacle heavenly venerable foreign life form crushing Yi Shiwen. Instead, it was Yi Shiwen crushing the foreign heavenly venerable and beating him up. This was a true crushing where one couldn't fight back. Although the foreign heavenly venerable was also very strong, he couldn't fight back at all under the shroud of that huge net. Many people couldn't help but be terrified when they saw this scene. They were all shocked. How could Yi Shiwen become so terrifying? Logically speaking, it shouldn't be like this. Even when the middle heavenly venerate defeated the Moon City Lord, there wasn't such a terrifying crushing situation. So scary. Could it be that the Eastern Heavenly Venerate had some kind of fortuitous encounter in the chaos? It's too scary. Apart from the Middle Heavenly Venerate, it should be the Eastern Heavenly Venerate. I didn't expect that the Eastern Heavenly Venerate, who has only been in position for a few years, would already be the strongest among the great Venerates. Many heavenly venerates of the central region noticed this battle and couldn't help but be dumbfounded. In particular, the old antiques that had existed for a long time were even more dumbfounded. Even in the distant past, they had never seen such a powerful heavenly venerate. Yi Shiwen hadn't even stepped into the peak realm, but he could already beat up a peak heavenly venerate like a ball. Looking from afar, one could see that in the depths of the galaxy, a large number of stars had been annihilated and dimmed. Fortunately, there weren't many living beings there. Otherwise, who knew how many lives would have been plunged into misery and suffering. However, this was also the place that Yi Shiwen had deliberately chosen. Naturally, he wasn't afraid of suffering and suffering. Boom! After an unknown amount of time, Yi Shiwen waved his hand slightly, and a terrifying mass of light directly blasted down from the depths of the galaxy. It directly landed on the ground, setting off a huge wave of dust that was tens of thousands of feet high. It looked extremely terrifying, and the entire ground was smashed into a huge bottomless pit. The light net that had been condensed by the endless laws disappeared directly. At the bottom of the pit, the foreign creature struggled to get up. However, most of the bones in his body had been broken. Given his cultivation, even if he had directly collided with a planet, the planet would have been directly smashed into powder. Meanwhile, his body wouldn't have been affected at all. He didn't even need to use his great powers to protect his body. Just his physical cultivation alone was already very terrifying. However, he had been smashed to the point where all the bones in his body had been broken. One could imagine how terrifying this strength was. The other heavenly venerates also saw this scene and naturally understood how terrifying Yi Shiwen's attack was. They all felt a chill run down their spines. Isn't this too exaggerated? Just how far has he gone? Could he be a half-step ruler? Probably. Only half-step sovereigns can be so terrifying. No, he isn't a half-step ruler yet. If he was, I'm afraid it would be even easier. Back then, when the previous Middle Heavenly Venerate was besieged by many foreign peak Heavenly Venerates, he used one hand to suppress the Primal Chaos Overlord seal, while his other hand severely injured the foreign peak Heavenly Venerates and forced them to flee. Although the current Eastern Heavenly Venerate is terrifying, he shouldn't be as terrifying as the previous Middle Heavenly Venerate. Yi Shiwen stood high and mighty, his arms crossed as he looked coldly at the foreign peak Heavenly Venerate and said, "Now you're a little more clear-headed, right?" The foreign peak Heavenly Venerate and the other foreign peak Heavenly Venerate found it difficult to even move. Although these weren't injuries to the core and were only superficial wounds, these were the easiest injuries for a Heavenly Venerate to recover from. But at the same time, this was also the most humiliating. This was what it meant to be hung up and beaten. He had thoroughly recognized the gap between them. Although he didn't understand why Yi Shiwen was so powerful to this extent, it simply subverted his understanding. However, it didn't prevent him from understanding that Yi Shiwen might really kill him if this went on. He just didn't understand why Yi Shiwen had let him go when he had such a great advantage. If it were him, he probably wouldn't have let him go. He didn't understand that Yi Shiwen's vision and breadth of mind had already surpassed him by a level. He was still entangled in the victory and defeat of the Fortune realm, while Yi Shiwen had already set his sights on countless epochs and was full of ambition. He wanted to advance to the half-step sovereign realm and even become a powerful sovereign realm expert. Just like how the Fortune Heavenly Monarch hadn't eradicated the foreign peak Heavenly Venerate back then, Yi Shiwen also didn't have such thoughts. In the face of such a great enemy, one more person in the martial epoch would naturally be more powerful. This foreign peak Heavenly Venerate just stared at Yi Shiwen, panting heavily. The injuries on its body healed very quickly. After all, such superficial wounds were very simple for a Heavenly Venerate. However, it didn't dare to act rashly anymore. What kind of joke was this? This guy was too savage. "We are waiting here to welcome Lord Primal Chaos Overlord," Are you going to make things difficult for Lord Primal Chaos Overlord? This foreign peak heavenly venerate glared at Yi Shiwen with its huge eyes. Chapter 37:37. Don't use the Chaos Overlord to pressure me. Others might be afraid of the Chaos Overlord, but I'm not. I've even killed his incarnation. Do I need to be afraid of you? Yi Shiwen sneered. I'm not afraid to tell you directly. When the Chaos Overlord is born, the first thing he will do is to look for me. Do I need to be afraid of you? This peak heavenly master level alien was a little dumbfounded. He could act like a tyrant here. His strength was indeed outstanding, but it didn't mean that the Fortune God dynasty couldn't do anything to him. If they really wanted to make a move, they could teach him a lesson in minutes. The Fortune God dynasty's foundation was unfathomable. Moreover, this was the Fortune God capital. The most important reason was that the Chaos Overlord was about to be born. Unless they completely fell out, these heavenly masters of the Fortune God dynasty were not willing to offend him. However, the guy in front of him was different. Putting aside the fact that his strength was completely above his, just the fact that he didn't mind shedding all pretense of cordiality made him feel helpless. The Chaos Overlord that others were most afraid of did not matter to him at all. I'll tell you one more time. No matter what you expect the Primal Chaos Overlord to change after coming out, I can tell you this. Don't be delusional. Do you really think that it's possible? Said Yi Shiwen. As long as I'm alive, you want to enter the Fortune God capital? Don't be delusional. While I'm still patient, get lost. Otherwise, the next time I attack, I won't be as lenient as this time. At this time, the alien army that had been scared to death by Yi Shiwen didn't dare to stay any longer. What a joke. If they continued like this, they would be beaten to death. They didn't doubt that Yi Shiwen had the ability to annihilate their entire army by himself. Their previous thoughts of helping the Primal Chaos Overlord escape and entering the divine capital of fortune were all thrown to the back of their mind. No matter what kind of thoughts they had, their first priority was to preserve their lives. They had to survive first. Only then could they talk about other things. If even survival became a kind of extravagant hope, then their thoughts were really just a dream. Since all of them were powerful experts, they did not drag their feet when they left. In less than an hour, they had already left through the transmission array. They did not even dare to fly over the Fortune God dynasty's territory, for fear that they might be shot in the back. Who asked them to be so arrogant, swaggering here and making noise? Although many people endured and did not dare to attack, but after Yi Shiwen took the lead to attract the hatred, they obviously did not care. Once a character like the Chaos Overlord came out, the first person he would look for would definitely be Yi Shiwen. In this way, their psychological pressure would be greatly reduced. If they dared to fly over the Fortune Divine Dynasty's territory, the consequences would be unimaginable. Yi Shiwen returned to the warlord's residence after he had driven these people away. The shock on the war elder's face hadn't disappeared yet. It seemed that he couldn't imagine that Yi Shiwen could be so tyrannical. The foreign heavenly master powerhouse was also a headache for him. Even if he wanted to attack, he did not have the strength to do so. However, it seemed that it was not enough to mobilize the elite troops in the Fortune Divine capital. However, when Yi Shiwen came out, he alone was able to hang him up and beat him up. The foreign army was also scared witless and quickly fled. What kind of strength was this? Although he felt that he had been able to accept Yi Shiwen's new settings again and again, every time he met him, he felt that his worldview was subverted. It was simply constantly refreshing his worldview. If Yi Shiwen could barely reach the position of Eastern Heavenly Master before he left for the Chaos Divine Capital, then it was not just a question of whether he could reach it now. Even since ancient times, there was no one who was more outstanding than Yi Shiwen in the position of Eastern Heavenly Master. Yi Shiwen did not lose to any of the previous Eastern Heavenly Masters, including the current Middle Heavenly Masters. Just the terrifying combat power that he displayed to beat up the peak Heavenly Master made those old antiques who had been quite critical of him speechless. Because they stood on the wrong side last time, those old antiques lost the qualification to run for Eastern Heavenly Master. After Yi Shiwen successfully took the position, he had been criticized. Of course, those old antiques did not dare to say so to Yi Shiwen's face, but it was inevitable that they would criticize him behind his back. In fact, it was not only Yi Shiwen who was criticized behind his back. Spacetime Heavenly Master, who had now become the City Lord of Moon City, was also another target of criticism. Although Spacetime Heavenly Master's qualifications were far more senior than Yi Shiwen's, in the eyes of those old antiques, there was no difference. They were both rising stars, and these two rising stars did not show an overwhelming advantage. Therefore, it was difficult to say that they were convincing to the masses. Therefore, the saying that there were no heroes at the time that made people famous had become the most common saying by those old antiques. Many of these people were like the war venerables. They were existences that had followed the fortune creation heavenly monarch into battle. Because of this, they knew how terrifying a half-step sovereign realm expert was. That was why they chose to stand by and watch during the foreign invasion. It wasn't just for the sake of seizing territory. The psychological pressure that the primal chaos overlord had caused them had returned. However, after today's battle, those old antiques should have nothing more to say. After all, if Yi Shiwen, who possessed such combat power, still said that he was not qualified, then no one was qualified. Moreover, even the original number one person of the Fortune God dynasty, the Middle Heavenly Master, might not be able to catch up to such combat power. At least in his opinion, this should be the case. It was just that whether it was Yi Shiwen or the Middle Heavenly Master, their combat power had clearly exceeded the realm that he could guess. Even though they were both Heavenly Masters, and War Elder was already at the peak of the third realm, he was still useless in this matter. The disparity was really too great. If he were to fight against a Middle Heavenly Master, Yi Shiwen would probably be casually beaten up without any strength to fight back. He was not even as good as the peak Heavenly Master from the foreign domain. Taoist friend skills are really getting more and more profound. I'm afraid that even a Middle Heavenly Master is not Taoist friend's opponent now. War Elder said casually, but he didn't expect Yi Shiwen to be non-committal. The result was already very obvious. Yi Shiwen had actually become the number one person of the Fortune God dynasty. If not for the fact that the primal chaos overlord was about to be born, it would not be an exaggeration to say that Yi Shiwen was the number one person under the heavens. He was extremely shocked. He didn't know how it had become like this. It felt like not many years had passed, but Yi Shiwen had gone from a junior to a peer who was on equal footing, and then to a great person who was far above him. He could only act as an assistant and help manage the entire central region, whereas Yi Shiwen could already manage the entire Fortune God dynasty. To put it bluntly, if a Middle Heavenly Venerable were to meet with any mishap, Yi Shiwen would be the next Middle Heavenly Venerable. What kind of difference was this? To this day, even he could only admit that some people were indeed far beyond his understanding. They could only be described as monsters, and could not be treated as ordinary people. Yi Shiwen had no intention of continuing to be polite with War Elder. He said, "I just came back, and I heard that the Middle Heavenly Master wants me to take over the power of the Fortune God dynasty?" "Yes, that's what I mean." War Elder nodded and said, "I just met the Middle Heavenly Master and heard about your matter, so I think it is most appropriate to let you take over the power of the Fortune God dynasty. After all, the Fortune God dynasty is facing an unprecedented crisis now. If we are not careful, even the martial arts era may be destroyed." He was very clear about the crisis represented. This time, the masters involved were simply unimaginable. Even a peerless master like the Middle Heavenly Master was seriously injured by a palm and almost didn't come back. If Yi Shiwen hadn't arrived in time, the consequences would have been unimaginable. I think the Middle Heavenly Master also has the same idea. Now is not the time to be modest. The martial arts era is in danger, and if not me, who else can I pass on this responsibility? Yi Shiwen said directly. He had such ability, so why should he give it up? Moreover, now was indeed not the time to be modest. This matter was related to the rise and fall of the entire martial arts era, so he could not back down. Once he backed down, he might become a stray dog and become homeless. At that time, it would be miserable. However, Taoist Eastern Heavenly Master, as far as I know, this time, not everyone is very satisfied with the Middle Heavenly Master handing over the power of the Fortune God dynasty to you. In fact, many people are very dissatisfied. War Elder glanced at Yi Shiwen and said. War Elder's expression was a little worried. This matter had clearly caused a lot of trouble. Otherwise, it wouldn't have reached him. However, Yi Shiwen's expression didn't show any signs of fuss, because he was very clear that this was inevitable. If the Middle Heavenly Master had asked him to rush to the front line, presumably those people would have been very happy. However, the Middle Heavenly Master had asked Yi Shiwen to control the power of the Fortune God dynasty. In other words, during this period of time, Yi Shiwen was almost equivalent to the Middle Heavenly Master. Moreover, this was related to the matter of the Middle Heavenly Master being seriously injured. Many people were probably already suspecting whether the Middle Heavenly Master was already at his limit. Otherwise, no matter how good his relationship with the Middle Heavenly Master was, he wouldn't have let him manage the Fortune God dynasty on his behalf. Only Yi Shiwen knew the reason behind this. It was just that the Middle Heavenly Master had suffered ordinary injuries, so naturally, there was no need to hand over the power to Yi Shiwen. But the problem was that several half-step sovereign-level experts might come to besiege the Fortune God dynasty. The situation was critical, and the Fortune God dynasty couldn't do without a leader. I know, but it doesn't matter. Let them come and hold the Heavenly Master Conference. If anyone is dissatisfied, feel free to speak. Chapter 37-38. I know, but it doesn't matter. Let them come and hold the Heavenly Venerables Conference. If anyone is dissatisfied, feel free to speak up. Yi Shiwen replied calmly. Since he had already decided to take on the role of the Fortune God dynasty's Prime Minister, he had already anticipated the challenges and disturbances that would arise. Now that the Prime Celestial Lord was in seclusion due to his injuries, it was a great opportunity for many people to rise to the top and preside over the Fortune God dynasty. How tempting was that! Being the Prime Minister of the Fortune Divine dynasty did not mean that they wanted to seize power. In fact, experts at their level of cultivation disdained the so-called power, and had no interest in managing these matters. Under normal circumstances, they would, at most, send out a wisp of their primordial spirit to deal with the matters that their subordinates couldn't handle. If they were not exploring the endless chaos, they would be in seclusion. Cultivation was always the most important factor. How could the pleasure of holding power compare to the joy of improving one's cultivation? But why did everyone want to become a sovereign and a middle celestial sovereign? It was because there were great benefits. Becoming a middle celestial sovereign would allow one to receive the blessings of the heavens. Heavenly merit would bestow upon one, but that was only the initial benefits. In the future, cultivation would be much easier than for ordinary people. Not to mention, after becoming a Prime Celestial Lord, one could borrow the entire Fortune God dynasty's resources to cultivate and read the Fortune Heavenly Lord's cultivation note. Cultivation was all about companions, techniques, and wealth. Becoming a Prime Celestial Lord meant having everything, and all the best resources. Although he was not officially a Prime Celestial Lord, just temporarily preside over the Fortune God dynasty, there were many benefits. With the will of heaven and earth, there were many benefits. Yi Shiwen also had this thought. After preside over the Fortune God dynasty, He would temporarily become the #1 person in the Fortune God dynasty and become the favored target of the martial epoch's heavenly Tao. This way, it would be easier for him to break through to the 9th realm, so he would not let anyone snatch it away. War Elder looked at Yi Shiwen. He did not expect Yi Shiwen to call for a Heavenly Venerables Conference. The Heavenly Venerables Conference was usually held when there was a major event in the Fortune God dynasty. This was because all the Heavenly Venerables had to appear to witness something or make a major decision. Yi Shiwen was extraordinarily magnanimous. He had the authority of a Middle Heavenly Venerate delegated to him, and no one could say anything against him. But now, if everything was discussed at the Heavenly Venerate Conference, it would be a different story. At that time, he might face all sorts of questions from the other Empyreans. One could imagine how much pressure he would have to withstand. If it were him, there would be no way. However, if they could withstand this pressure and convince all the Heavenly Venerates at the Heavenly Venerate meet, the benefits wouldn't be small. At the very least, no one would dare to go against them. That was because it had been verified by all the Heavenly Lords, and the Heavenly Law would also recognize it. Yi Shiwen wouldn't be playing around when that time came. If it was before, he would definitely advise Yi Shiwen not to be so reckless, but now it was different. He saw how Yi Shiwen beat up that peak celestial master with his own eyes. This made him speechless. Yi Shiwen indeed had the terrifying strength to suppress everyone. Moreover, the upcoming major event was destined to happen. The Fortune God dynasty must be united, and no one could hold them back. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. He glanced at Yi Shiwen and roughly understood Yi Shiwen's intention. Yi Shiwen was hoping for conflicts to erupt in advance. It was better than waiting until he fought with those ancient eras. At that time, the martial Tao era would really perish. Oh right, other than transferring the authority of the Fortune God dynasty to you, Middle Heavenly Venerate also opened up some authority to you to deal with those ancient eras. The Battle Elder said. Authority? What authority? Yi Shiwen vaguely understood that Middle Heavenly Venerate probably wanted to use all the trump cards of the Fortune God dynasty. There must be a reason why the Fortune God dynasty was able to maintain the status quo after the Fortune Heavenly Monarch left, or at least not collapse. Otherwise, without a half-step sovereign, it would be impossible to maintain the status quo. It was just that these trump cards hadn't been revealed yet. Otherwise, if a half-step sovereign like the Chaos Overlord appeared, the Fortune God dynasty would only feel a mountain of pressure, but not collapse. This was because they were confident that they had trump cards to contend with the Chaos Overlord and prevent him from committing any crimes. I'll go and tidy it up first. After the Heavenly Venerate meet, I'll hand it over to you. The Battle Elder said, after all, some things haven't been touched for many years. They won't be moved under normal circumstances. Only in this kind of life and death situation will it be possible. All right. Yi Shiwen nodded and didn't ask any more questions. He took a sip of immortal tea and looked into the distant chaos. The news of Yi Shiwen's return spread to the ears of the big shots in the Fortune God dynasty. They were still waiting and watching to see how Yi Shiwen would react to the recent uproar about the Middle Heavenly Venerate's delegation of authority. But they only heard Yi Shiwen's decree spread throughout the Fortune God dynasty, calling for the Heavenly Venerate meet. If possible, it would be best if he came in person. For a time, another storm was set off. No one had expected that Yi Shiwen would directly call for the Heavenly Venerate meet without making any announcement. Humph, this Eastern Heavenly Venerate is very confident. He actually called for the Heavenly Venerate meet as soon as he came. This junior obviously has us under his control. He actually dares to bring up the Heavenly Venerate meet. I want to see how he's going to deal with us. He's overestimating himself. Do you think he can beat all of us by himself? For a time, the Heavenly Venerates, especially the old antiques who were eyeing the Middle Heavenly Venerate position, were alarmed. In many people's opinion, Yi Shiwen was more or less overestimating himself. The last time the Middle Heavenly Venerate held the Heavenly Venerate meet, he had overwhelming power. The fact that he directly suppressed the Moon City Lord was proof of that. Later on, Yi Shiwen inherited the Eastern Heavenly Venerate position. In their opinion, it was a little out of place. It was just that at that time, they were all deprived of the qualifications to inherit the Middle Heavenly Venerate position, so Yi Shiwen took advantage of the loophole. This was the system, these were the rules of the game. Even Heavenly Venerates had to abide by such rules. Even the Middle Heavenly Venerates, who were the most qualified to not abide by the rules, had taken the lead to abide by the rules of the game. What qualifications did they have to say no? Moreover, although the rules of the game restricted them, they also protected them. These were the rules of the game that had been set when the Fortune God Monarch was still alive. No one dared to break the rules because they were well aware of the consequences. Before the establishment of the Fortune God dynasty, the chaotic situation in the fortune world was the result of the absence of such rules of the game. Without restrictions, there were all kinds of killings everywhere. Compared to the earth-shattering killings in ancient times, the friction between the major forces within the Fortune God dynasty and the battles between the Fortune God dynasty and the outer domain were all small matters. The Heavenly Venerate meet was the highest rule. Once something was established during the Heavenly Venerate meet, no one could oppose it. The space-time Heavenly Venerate was in charge of the central domain. It was a spontaneous act and didn't go through the Heavenly Venerate meet. Therefore, if the Middle Heavenly Venerate was promoted, he would have to give up his position. However, the Middle Heavenly Venerate meet had to go through the Heavenly Venerate meet, so his position was unshakable. For a time, as Yi Shiwen's decree spread throughout the Fortune God dynasty and the epic battlefield, all the Heavenly Venerates made preparations to move. It would have been fine if they didn't attend an ordinary meeting, but this time was different. It was possible that the Fortune God dynasty had changed its leader not long after the appointment. Especially now that the news of the many ancient eras planning to destroy the martial epoch had spread far and wide, even the ordinary Heavenly Venerates knew about it. Under such circumstances, the Heavenly Venerate meet this time was even more unusual. Many people were well aware that many things would be decided in this Heavenly Venerate meet. For the old antiques, they wanted more power, or even to reach the heavens in a single bound and become a Middle Heavenly Venerate. As for the ordinary Heavenly Venerates, they wanted the right to know what had happened that made 3 of the 5 Supremes of the Fortune God dynasty head into the primal chaos. In the end, 2 of the Supremes were seriously injured, and Yi Shiwen had to clean up the mess. With such thoughts in mind, the rarely seen Heavenly Venerates started flying in the direction of the Fortune God capital. Even on the epic battlefield, except for the few Heavenly Venerates who stayed behind, everyone else had started to return to the Fortune God dynasty. Even the Heavenly Venerates who stayed behind and those who couldn't come sent their incarnations to participate in the Heavenly Venerate meet. An unprecedented level of participation was born under Yi Shiwen's decree. This was the first time since Yi Shiwen had taken over the Fortune God dynasty's power. For the residents of the Fortune God dynasty, from time to time, they saw incomparably powerful Heavenly Venerates crossing the void. Some rode on 9 dragon carriages, some rode on purple clouds that filled the sky, and some came in a mighty and imposing manner. They had never seen such a scene before. Coupled with the various Emperor Lords that came with them, the entire Fortune God capital became incomparably lively. They also felt an unprecedented sense of security. Under such circumstances, no one with ulterior motives dared to take any action. Otherwise, they would be provoking all the Heavenly Venerates, which was no different from seeking death. Under such circumstances, the Heavenly Venerate meet was held once again in the depths of the Fortune Heavenly Palace. Heavenly Venerates sat on the thrones. In the outermost area, there were Emperor Lords that were at least several times the number of Heavenly Venerates present. As extreme Tao powerhouses, they should receive the minimum amount of respect. Chapter 37-39. Even the Emperor was present. So, everyone could imagine how great Yi Shiwen's determination was this time. Even the heavenly venerables and Emperor Lords knew what was going on. Many Emperor Lords looked at Yi Shiwen, who was sitting high on the throne, in disbelief. In the past, Yi Shiwen, who could only sit on the periphery like them and listen to the conference, actually had the ability to organize a heavenly venerables conference. What kind of power was this? It was unbelievable. Yi Shiwen sat on the throne. When all the heavenly venerables arrived, he opened his eyes. Previously, he had been secretly comprehending. There was not much time left for him, so he had been doing his best to cultivate. Many heavenly venerables looked at Yi Shiwen, secretly shocked. They felt that although Yi Shiwen was sitting there, it was as if there was no one around him. When they closed their eyes, they could not see him. Only when they opened their eyes could they see Yi Shiwen. However, they could only see him. Apart from that, they could not feel a trace of Yi Shiwen's aura. It was as if Yi Shiwen was in harmony with heaven and earth, and could ascend at any time. Although this feeling was unreliable, it also made them feel that Yi Shiwen was becoming more and more unfathomable. On the other hand, in the eyes of some of the more experienced seniors, all of this was just an act to be deliberately mystifying, and it was just some small trick. On Yi Shiwen's left, Southern Heavenly Venerate and Northern Heavenly Venerate sat on his left and right. Western Heavenly Venerate and Middle Heavenly Venerate did not even appear. They were at Yi Shiwen's disposal. Next to them were the city lords of the heaven, earth, mysterious, yellow, chaos, sun, and moon divine cities. Among these city lords, only the Moon City Lord, who was the original spacetime Heavenly Venerate, had come in his spirit incarnation. The others had come in person. On one hand, it was because Moon City was being rebuilt, so he could not leave. The entire defense system of Moon City had been completely destroyed, so there were many people guarding it. On the other hand, he was also very clear that as a junior with shallow qualifications, many people were already dissatisfied with him sitting in the position of Moon City Lord. He did not have the qualifications or strength to ascend to the heavens in a single step and become the Prime Minister of the Fortune God dynasty. Therefore, he had only sent his spirit incarnation to attend. Eastern Lord, why did you summon us here? You can tell us now. A veteran Heavenly Venerate couldn't help but ask. Everyone looked at Yi Shiwen. They knew in their hearts that the real show had finally begun. Since everyone wants to know, then I don't think there's any need to hide it. This time, I, the Middle Empyrean, the Western Empyrean, and several other fellow Taoists went to the primal chaos. I think some people know what we're doing, but there should be even more people who don't know what we're doing. We actually made the Middle Empyrean and the Western Empyrean return injured. You all must have some doubts in your hearts, Yi Shiwen slowly said. Among these people, only a small number of people knew the purpose of Yi Shiwen and the others. The rest of them only knew that they were going to do something big. Otherwise, 3 of the 5 great supremes wouldn't have gone there personally. I have gathered all of you here because of this matter. I don't intend to make fun of you. Instead, I want everyone to understand the dire situation we are facing this time. Yi Shiwen said faintly. Now, those ancient epochs are plotting to destroy our martial epoch. What? How is this possible? Are they crazy? They must be tired of living. Since they want to court death, then send them on their way. Previously, we let them break through Moon City. It seems that they have become arrogant. Since they came to die, then let's fulfill their wish. The heavenly venerables and emperors were suddenly in an uproar. However, it was not because of this matter itself, but because of the arrogance of the ancient epoch. For many years, the Fortune God dynasty had never fallen into a disadvantageous position when facing the ancient epochs. Now that the fortune god emperor was not here, of course, they could not beat the ancient epics with one hand like they did in the past. However, it was not the ancient epics' turn to bully them. Facing the ancient epics, everyone's morale was high. There was no fear. Quiet. A faint voice suppressed everyone's voices. Yi Shiwen easily made everyone stop. However, there was a feeling that emerged from the bottom of their hearts, and that was to be quiet. Yi Shiwen's eyes were cold and indifferent. Do you think it's that simple? If it was just the delusion of the ancient epics, then the Middle Heavenly Venerables, West Heavenly Venerables, and I would not have personally gone to the depths of the primal chaos. Yi Shiwen said faintly, I am here to tell you what price the Middle Heavenly Venerables and West Heavenly Venerables paid to protect the martial Dao epoch and to protect everyone's safety. Everyone's expression became dignified because they knew that Yi Shiwen was about to say something important. Those ancient epochs intend to besiege our martial Dao epoch's heavenly Dao. If the martial Dao epoch's heavenly Dao collapses, I think you should be very clear about the consequences. Yi Shiwen said faintly. What? Besiege the heavenly Dao? How is that possible? Even we don't know what the heavenly Dao looks like. They must be crazy. This is simply impossible. Everyone was in an uproar. This was even more absurd and inconceivable than the ancient epoch's plan to attack the Fortune God dynasty. The heavenly Dao existed in the dark, but it was not a tangible existence. It would only materialize under some very special circumstances, such as when a cultivator was undergoing a tribulation. It was simply impossible for the ancient epochs to besiege and kill the heavenly Dao. Aside from not being able to find the heavenly Dao, even if they found it, it would be useless. The power of the heavenly Dao was simply endless. It could create countless heavenly venerate seas at any time. Human strength was limited, but the power of the heavenly Dao was endless. For the heavenly venerables to besiege and kill the heavenly Dao was simply courting death. Aside from courting death, they could not think of any other words. However, some of the heavenly venerables became solemn. Although it sounded ridiculous to kill the heavenly Dao, they were no strangers to the destruction of an era. In other words, it wasn't the first time the Fortune Divine Dynasty had done such a thing, so they understood the process very well. The era of the heavenly Dao was indeed terrifying and powerful, but it did not mean that they had no way to deal with the era of the heavenly Dao. Even the Fortune God Lord could refine a heaven-defying treasure like the heaven-sealing talisman, not to mention the other epochs. In each epoch, there were their own tyrannical peerless geniuses. Before the martial epoch, those ancient epochs had also successfully destroyed the ancient epochs one after another. They had plenty of means to do so. If it was just wishful thinking, was it worth it for the Middle Heavenly Venerables, Eastern Heavenly Venerables, and Western Heavenly Venerables to personally lead a group of experts to stop it? Obviously, it was not that simple. Others also quickly realized this. They were afraid that things wouldn't be as simple as they had imagined. Everyone looked at Yi Shiwen and spontaneously quieted down. The other party has the means to achieve this. Unfortunately, we did not manage to stop the other party from obtaining this means when we went into the depths of the primal chaos this time. As everyone can see, the Middle Heavenly Venerables and Western Heavenly Venerables returned with serious injuries. Yi Shiwen said faintly. He knew that Sage Absolute Heaven's inheritance seemed to have been snatched by Qin Zun. He did not go over, so he did not know what happened afterward. However, this did not prevent him from speculating from other sources. This was because, according to the subsequent information he obtained, the ancient epoch's restlessness did not stop because of this. They were still mobilizing their troops, so the result was very obvious. Qin Zun had probably also failed. Although he did not know why Qin Zun had failed, the final result was already out. The half-moon immortal monarch had succeeded. Therefore, he did not dare to relax at all and welcomed the final storm of attacks. Everyone understood the main point of Yi Shiwen's words this time. The Middle Heavenly Venerables and Western Heavenly Venerables had returned with serious injuries. The other Heavenly Venerables were not just 1 or 2 dead. They were all high-level Heavenly Venerables above the 7th realm. This was something that had not been lost in the Battle of Moon City. Therefore, for a Middle Heavenly Venerate to be seriously injured, it should be a half-step ruler. Otherwise, how could the Middle Heavenly Venerables not even be able to protect themselves? Yi Shiwen glanced at them and said indifferently, "This time, there are half-step sovereigns involved, and there's more than one. Ordinary Heavenly Venerables naturally can't do anything to our martial epic's Heavenly Tao, but what if there are several half-step sovereigns? All the Heavenly Venerables and Sovereign Emperors could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. They seemed to finally understand the severity of the matter. Just one primal chaos overlord made them feel like they were facing a great enemy. If there were so many half-step rulers, the consequences would be unimaginable. At this moment, they finally understood why the Divine Dynasty was acting like it was facing a great enemy. I know that everyone is also very curious as to why the Middle Heavenly Venerate would hand over the authority to me this time. It is because he had no other choice. There will definitely be a bitter battle after this. As the saying goes, a group of dragons without a leader is undoubtedly seeking death. Therefore, I will not pass on this responsibility and accept this heavy responsibility," Yi Shiwen said as he looked at everyone. "Pass on this responsibility? Eastern Heavenly Venerate, I admit that you have indeed made a lot of contributions to the Fortune Divine Dynasty. However, this is a time of crisis. The more it is like this, the more experienced and prestigious the person leading the world will be. Only then will everyone be convinced. Only then will the Fortune Divine Dynasty's strength be gathered to the greatest extent. I believe this should be everyone's wish." At this point, an old antique finally could not help but speak up. Chapter 3740. Yi Shiwen's expression didn't change, but he thought to himself that someone had finally jumped out. He knew that these people had been waiting for this person for a long time. Even if they knew that they would face a dangerous situation, they wouldn't give up on climbing up. His lips curled up into a smile, as if he was mocking her. A person with qualifications and prestige. "Are you talking about you?" Yi Shiwen faintly looked at this old antique and said. This old antique had already stepped into the peak Heavenly Venerate realm. It could be said that he had the strength and qualifications to be the East, South, West, and West Great Heavenly Venerates. However, the problem was that in the last foreign invasion, although he had obtained territory, he had lost his qualifications and reputation. Having lost the Fortune God Dynasty's popular will, the popular will might seem like a joke to them, and they couldn't touch it. However, which one of them here was a simple character? They knew that water could carry a boat, but it could also capsize a boat. Those common people were helpless against the high and mighty figures like them. But the Heavenly Tao could. Heaven's hearing was the people's hearing, Heaven's seeing was the people's seeing, Heaven's will was the people's will. If there was an uproar and the people were boiling with resentment, then the heavens would naturally think of ways to humiliate you. For example, choking on water, tripping on a rock when you go out. These seemingly inconceivable things could actually happen. Not to mention cultivation deviation during cultivation, inexplicable absent-mindedness during battle, and so on. Which one of these wasn't the punishment of the Heavenly Tao? Therefore, they dared to deceive and oppose Middle Heavenly Venerates, but they didn't dare to oppose the common people of the world. Because they represented the Heavenly Tao. Therefore, they had given up that time, but that didn't mean that they would give up this time. It might not necessarily be me, but I think that we should be more qualified than Eastern Heavenly Venerate. Eastern Heavenly Venerate, you haven't even properly managed the Eastern region, and now you want to lead the Fortune God Dynasty. I'm afraid that you won't be able to do it. This old heavenly venerate's words resonated with many old antique. Right, heavenly Tao, heavenly venerate. This old heavenly venerate even directed the conversation to the heavenly Tao sect master. Among the common people, the heavenly Tao sect was indeed the leader of the world. Even the heavenly Tao sect master's cultivation was among the best among the heavenly venerates. He had no difficulty standing shoulder to shoulder with the Supremes. Besides Middle Empyreans, no one dared to say that they could suppress him. What's the matter? Is the heavenly sect also interested in getting involved? Yi Shiwen looked at the heavenly lord of the heavenly way and asked with a smirk. Our heavenly Tao sect has no objections to this. If the Fortune God dynasty needs us, this lord will also go to the front line to fight. As for other matters, there is nothing more to say. Heavenly Venerate said calmly when he saw that everyone was looking at him. He had no intention of getting involved in this matter. The reaction of the Heavenly Lord of the Heavenly Law was exactly the same as what he had expected. He was too different. He was the number one sect in the world. He was the leader of the civilian forces. His strength had also reached the peak of the Heavenly Lord realm. This series of halos was too dazzling. In fact, he could even pose a threat to the Fortune Divine dynasty. If this kind of person continued to act like those old fogies, aggressively looking for trouble with the Fortune Divine dynasty, then he would truly be seeking his own death. At that time, even if the Fortune Divine dynasty was unwilling to go to war and suffer great losses, they had no choice but to choose to uproot the Heavenly Tao sect. In fact, such a thing had not happened all these years. It meant that the Heavenly Venerate knew when to stop. Now that he had entered the Fortune Divine dynasty and presided over the Fortune Divine dynasty, it seemed to be a glorious time. However, it also represented endless danger. He was indeed strong, but who would be convinced? There were many people who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Under such circumstances, if he were to stand out, he would inevitably become the bird that stuck out. In particular, he was the Eastern Heavenly Venerate who controlled the Eastern Territory. The Heavenly Sect was also in the Eastern Territory. If they shed all pretense of cordiality, the Eastern Heavenly Venerate mansion would certainly face all kinds of troubles in the future. However, the Heavenly Venerate would not have it easy either. The veteran Heavenly Venerate was a little embarrassed when he saw that the Heavenly Venerate had no intention of being dragged down by him. However, it disappeared in an instant. What qualifications? What prestige? Do they matter at this time? It's fine if I play this seniority game with you normally. However, it's not up to you to mess around now. Yi Shiwen said indifferently. His words immediately caused an uproar. The complexions of many of the older generation suddenly changed. They relied on their tyrannical strength to survive. The most important thing was seniority. This was a rule that everyone recognized. However, Yi Shiwen had treated this rule as a ridiculous game. How could they keep their faces? Eastern Heavenly Venerate, your words are a little too much. Another veteran Heavenly Venerate stepped forward. He was in existence at the 9th level. The Fortune Divine dynasty's deep and terrifying foundation was on full display at this moment, especially after rescuing a batch of people from the path of fortune. It was even more terrifying. Besides him, many other veteran Heavenly Venerates were also glaring at Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen was breaking the rules. He simply didn't respect the rules that they had followed for generations. Only some celestial venerables were silent. They were the celestial venerables who had followed him to battle in the chaos. They were all rescued by Yi Shiwen. They had also seen Yi Shiwen's terrifying strength. Even the celestial venerables of the ancient epochs had been beaten to the point that they couldn't fight back. Yi Shiwen had defeated the experts of several epochs by himself and annihilated them all. They naturally wouldn't choose to jump out at this time unless they were crazy. There were also some Heavenly Venerates from the central region. They had all seen how Yi Shiwen had dealt with the foreign peak Heavenly Venerate. It had been a complete beating. The peak Heavenly Venerate hadn't even been able to fight back. If they had been in Yi Shiwen's shoes, they probably wouldn't have fared much better. Hence, they collectively fell silent and didn't say anything else. Did I say too much? I know that many of you covet this position, but like I said, this isn't a normal time. I don't have that much time to play this kind of senseless game with you. Yi Shiwen suddenly stood up from his seat. Now that we are facing a formidable enemy, the Central Heavenly Venerates entrusted this power to me. This is a form of trust in me. At the same time, I also know that many of you aren't very convinced by me. It doesn't matter. I will give you a chance now. If you want to make a move, feel free to do so. However, if anyone dares to hold me back or cause trouble after this, I will recognize you. The Fortune God Dynasty's heavenly rules and heavenly laws won't recognize you. Yi Shiwen waved his hand after he finished speaking. Suddenly, a huge passage appeared in the entire hall. At the end of this passage was the primal chaos. Then, Yi Shiwen took a step forward and directly entered the primal chaos. He stood firmly in the primal chaos and said, "It doesn't matter to me whether you come at me one by one or all at once." Yi Shiwen's words made those veteran Empyreans even more unhappy. Yi Shiwen was simply provoking them. He didn't place them in his eyes at all. Even if it wasn't the era where they could move unhindered in the past, the Celestial Masters couldn't be said to be angry. After all, they had always been in their peak state. Yi Shiwen's words were tantamount to provoking all of them. "Eastern Heavenly Venerate, I think you are really too arrogant. Can you fight all of us by yourself?" An old Heavenly Venerate shouted angrily. "Whether I can fight or not, you will know once you try." Yi Shiwen stood in the primal chaos with his hands clasped behind his back. "All right, I will fight you." A ninth realm Heavenly Venerate suddenly flared up. His body erupted with a frightening divine radiance that carried a frightening aura as he rushed towards Yi Shiwen. "Eastern Heavenly Venerate, I know that you have a treasure that can increase your strength. If you don't use it now, then when?" The ninth realm Heavenly Venerate said. He whistled like the wind, carrying a frightening aura that shot straight into the sky. "I don't need it to deal with you. Are you looking down on me?" The ninth realm Heavenly Venerate was even more furious. Now that things had come to this, even the most stubborn person had to admit that Yi Shiwen's future was indeed boundless. He might even reach the middle Heavenly Venerate realm in the future. However, that was also in the future. How could he look down on them now? He roared, and the endless brilliance on his body transformed into a world in an instant. It pressed straight down on Yi Shiwen. He had also heard of Yi Shiwen's prestige and knew that Yi Shiwen had a very powerful supreme ancestral symbol. If Yi Shiwen had used the supreme ancestral symbol, he would have been somewhat afraid. After all, it was a move that had killed the incarnation of the primal chaos overlord. However, Yi Shiwen actually dared not use it now. This was a good opportunity for him. He would definitely teach these young people a lesson on how to behave. However, just as he had this thought, he quickly discovered that he wasn't the one teaching Yi Shiwen how to behave, but Yi Shiwen was the one teaching him how to behave. Yi Shiwen simply grabbed at the void in the face of the suppression of the world of laws. He grabbed a long sword that was tens of thousands of meters long and slashed at the world. Rumble! Wherever the sword light passed, everything collapsed violently. A huge crack appeared in the primal chaos. It was extremely terrifying. The sword light cut through everything like a hot knife through butter. It directly slashed 3 inches in front of the Heavenly Venerate's forehead before suddenly stopping. Chapter 3741. The sword landed 3 inches in front of the veteran Empyrean and stopped. The sword chi suddenly stopped, not moving forward at all. It was also controlled to a certain degree. If it had moved forward a little more, the veteran Heavenly Master's head would have exploded. But it was only for a moment. Victory and defeat had been decided. The veteran Heavenly Master suddenly felt cold sweat dripping down his back. If the sword had moved forward a little more, he felt that his head would have exploded. He instantly understood the gap between him and Yi Shiwen. The gap was too big, whether it was in terms of speed, strength, or technique. He clearly hasn't stepped into the ninth realm. How can he be so strong? He could still feel that Yi Shiwen hadn't stepped into the ninth realm. However, he was so strong that he hadn't even used his trump card to increase his strength. How could this be? At this time, he realized that he seemed to be out of touch with the information he should have received. "Thank you for letting me win," Yi Shiwen said faintly. The veteran Heavenly Master snorted, and had no choice but to turn around and leave the chaos. He returned to the Heavenly Master Hall. At this time, he wished he could drill a hole in the ground and hide in it. Previously, he had been so confident that he could challenge Yi Shiwen. In the end, he had been defeated by Yi Shiwen without wasting any time. Yi Shiwen had used absolute strength to tell him how ridiculous his wishful thinking was. "Is there anyone else who wants to come up and teach me?" Yi Shiwen stood firmly in the chaos and glanced at the venue of the Heavenly Master meeting. "Eastern Heavenly Master, you are indeed strong, but it is impossible for us to give up like this." A cold voice rang out. In the chaos, a heaven-shaking ferocious beast appeared in front of everyone. This was an ancient ferocious beast that looked like a divine lion. Its entire body was covered in a layer of scarlet light. Then, another matchless figure that seemed to be made of metal appeared in the chaos. His aura was earth-shattering, stirring up turbulent waves in the chaos. After the metallic figure appeared, an incomparably huge figure appeared within the chaos. He stomped his foot on the chaos, causing a tidal wave that was tens of millions of feet tall to surge out. Everyone looked closely and saw that it was actually a Titan. It was an extremely rare ancestor of the Titan race. The supreme prestige of this race had spread in countless worlds. Yi Shiwen had also fought against the Titan more than once in the past. These three people were also peak Heavenly Masters. Their auras were tyrannical. They weren't inferior to several great masters or the city lords of the 10 great divine city. They were hidden experts among the common people. The three of them surrounded Yi Shiwen. The Eastern Heavenly Sovereign is still too impulsive. If it was a one-on-one fight, those fellows might not be able to do anything to him. Yet, he actually allowed them to come at him together. Does he really think that he is invincible? The North Lord frowned slightly. Yi Shiwen might not know these three lords, but he knew that they were extremely old antique. They could even be considered his seniors. When he had just achieved the Tao, he had already been unrivaled in the world and was invincible. If he were to encounter any one of the three, he would find it very troublesome, let alone the three of them together. It would be good enough if he could protect himself. Southern Tianzuan also frowned. Although his relationship with Yi Shiwen was only average, the several great supreme masters were considered to be in the same camp at this time. All of them belonged to the Fortune God dynasty. He naturally didn't want to see Yi Shiwen defeated like this. The other city lords of the 10 great divine city also didn't say anything. Their eyes were fixed on the chaos. The auras of those 4 figures were terrifyingly vigorous. It was as if they could ignite the entire chaos. As the representative of the human race, Little Crescent Moon was extremely nervous. She couldn't help but worry when she saw that her father was surrounded by these experts. The auras of those people were terrifyingly vigorous. Even though she had also entered the Emperor realm, she was still too insignificant in the face of this power. The other party could seriously injure her with a puff of air. This was the gap in absolute strength. Yi Shiwen wasn't the slightest bit nervous after being surrounded by the 3 Lord Heavenly Sovereigns. He just asked indifferently, "Only these people? Where are the others? Aren't you going to come at me together?" The 3 Lord Heavenly Sovereigns were a little annoyed when they saw that Yi Shiwen was still so calm and didn't care about them. The Divine Lion said directly, East Lord, the three of us are the representatives of everyone. If you can defeat the three of us, they won't say anything else. However, I don't think you have the ability to do so. Today, we will let you know that you are still far from being able to act arrogantly in front of us," the Titan said. His loud voice formed a terrifying wave in the chaos. "Since no one else is coming up, it's just as well." Yi Shiwen's expression was indifferent, but his eyes started to become fierce. "As long as I defeat all of you, there shouldn't be any problems. Then we'll talk about it when you can do it." The Metal Man roared, and a metal war chariot appeared beneath his feet. This war chariot had traces of time all over it. It was broken and rusted, but it exuded a ferocious aura. There were even traces of blood in the corners of the war chariot. Each drop of blood contained an astonishing amount of energy. The Metal Man drove the huge war chariot directly towards Yi Shiwen. This war chariot was truly too terrifying. Huge cracks appeared in the primordial chaos, and there were traces of broken walls everywhere. This was an ancient battlefield, and this war chariot was rampaging on this ancient battlefield, destroying everything in its path. On the other side, the Titan had already rushed out. Its huge body crossed the universe with a single step, and it directly pounced on Yi Shiwen. "East Lord, you are very powerful. In my impression, you don't seem to be any worse than the previous East Lord Heavenly Sovereigns. However, you are also very arrogant. Do you really think that you have the ability to fight against several of us? Even a Middle Heavenly Sovereign wouldn't dare to say that." The Divine Lion let out a roar and pounced over as well. 3 great Heavenly Venerates, each of whom had already stepped into the peak Heavenly Venerate realm. What kind of terrifying lineup was this? What kind of terrifying lineup was this? Ordinary people simply couldn't imagine it. The Metal Man on the war chariot was the first to rush in front of Yi Shiwen. His whole body was bursting with a metallic light, and his pair of metallic eyes were cold and cruel. A long spear appeared in his hand. The long spear pierced through the entire chaos like a huge waterfall and directly pierced towards Yi Shiwen's head. This spear seemed ordinary, but in fact it was terrifying to the extreme. The Metal Man had condensed all of his life skills into this spear. Its murderous intent traversed through time and space. This spear contained the aura of immortality and conquest. This spear could destroy a galaxy. Yi Shiwen opened his eyes, but his legs seemed to be rooted in the chaos. He didn't move at all, allowing the spear to directly pierce his head. Clang! However, only a loud sound of metal colliding was heard. The spear pierced Yi Shiwen's head. The scene of Yi Shiwen being pierced by the spear didn't happen. On the contrary, the spear stopped directly on Yi Shiwen's forehead. It couldn't break through Yi Shiwen's head. 2 terrifying forces wrapped in the nomological laws and the power of the talismans collided and devoured each other. Circles of golden fluctuations appeared on Yi Shiwen's body. The spear's power that could pierce through the sky and shatter the galaxy was absorbed by these circles of golden fluctuations. It couldn't move any further. What? How is this possible? The Metal Man was full of confidence, but this attack was easily blocked by Yi Shiwen. This was something he never expected. He also didn't expect that one attack would be effective. From the way Yi Shiwen easily defeated that veteran Heavenly Sovereign, he could tell that Yi Shiwen had probably reached the peak Heavenly Sovereign level of combat power. Although he didn't know how he did it, it was an indisputable fact that he had done it. Therefore, he didn't dare to underestimate Yi Shiwen. However, even if he didn't dare to underestimate Yi Shiwen, he didn't expect something like this to happen. However, it was already too late. The other 2 were still not far away. They couldn't attack at the same time. In the end, they had left a small flaw. This flaw wasn't worth mentioning. However, when they encountered Yi Shiwen, it became the most fatal flaw. Because Yi Shiwen was too fast. Fast. Yi Shiwen almost instantly pounced on the Metal Man. The boundary and domain in the chariot under the metal man's feet were activated almost instantly. However, the moment they were activated, they were smashed into pieces by Yi Shiwen. When Yi Shiwen's speed was raised to the extreme, even if he didn't do anything, it would still be comparable to a top attack. This was also a method that Middle Heavenly Sovereigns used to crush all the heroes in the world. Now that Yi Shiwen used it, its power was simply terrifying. A burst of blazing light erupted in the chaos. It was the light that Yi Shiwen tore apart the Metal Man's domain and boundary with absolute speed. The Metal Man wanted to retreat at this time, but he found that it was too late. He didn't know when a huge seal talisman flew out, directly sealing off all his escape routes. Even the space around him was sealed. There was too little space for him to move around. Yi Shiwen, who was flying over, shouted loudly. Then, he directly trampled down with his foot. His foot fell like a divine mountain, trampling a huge hole in the chaos. Cracks spread in all directions with the hole as the center, densely packed like a spider's web. Bang! The Metal Man was directly kicked, and he was instantly sent flying tens of millions of miles away. His body seemed to have fallen apart, and he couldn't move at all. Metal Man Heavenly Sovereign eliminated. Chapter 3742. The Metal Man Heavenly Venerate was dumbfounded by Yi Shiwen's series of attacks. Although he didn't die, he had temporarily lost the ability to fight. He knew that he had been eliminated, and there was no point in dwelling on it. It would only make him lose his last bit of face. Just this series of attacks had made him understand that the gap between him and Yi Shiwen was big enough. His eyes were still staring at Yi Shiwen's figure in disbelief. Although he had been defeated, he still couldn't believe it. He knew that Yi Shiwen had a treasure that could increase his strength, but it didn't seem like Yi Shiwen had used it. Yet Yi Shiwen had defeated him so easily. How depressing was that? All of this took a long time to describe, but it all happened in the blink of an eye. After kicking the Metal Man Heavenly Venerate out of the match, Yi Shiwen pounced on the Divine Lion without any hesitation. That Divine Lion had been pouncing on Yi Shiwen to join forces with the Metal Man Heavenly Venerate to kill Yi Shiwen. However, Yi Shiwen suddenly disappeared and reappeared next to him. In the process of disappearing and reappearing, the Metal Man Heavenly Venerate had lost the right to fight. Roar! The Divine Lion let out a roar in an instant. Countless blazing lights erupted from its body, covering the sky and earth and suppressing the chaos. Such a heaven-defying technique was truly astonishing. Its body was equally terrifying. It could cross the entire universe with just its physical body alone. There was nothing in the world that could stop it. This Divine Lion turned its head and pounced towards Yi Shiwen. It relied on its powerful body that could run amok in the world to directly sweep out. Just in time, Yi Shiwen laughed heartily and spread his arms like two dragons. 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Yi Shiwen's arms bombarded forward. Bang! 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 Both sides collided fiercely in the air. It was another peerless attack. The two of them were like two powerful torrents of chi and blood that collided fiercely. In the blink of an eye, they had already exchanged 1,000 blows, 10,000 blows. The terrifying sounds of explosions directly caused the primal chaos to be like raging waves, unable to stop at all. The entire primal chaos was blown apart by this terrifying battle. Everywhere was filled with boiling primal chaos chi. Cracks were formed from the explosions, and the aftermath of the terrifying explosions was everywhere. At this time, everyone's eyes finally caught the scene. They couldn't help but be shocked by Yi Shiwen's terrifying strength. A simple set of attacks had taken away the Metal Man Heavenly Master. That was a peak Heavenly Master. He was defeated just like that. Many people were dumbfounded upon seeing this, including the Southern Heavenly Venerate, the Northern Heavenly Venerate, and the city lords of the 10 sacred cities. They had never thought that Yi Shiwen would be so terrifying. One had to know that if they were in Huang Xiaolong's shoes, it wouldn't be easy for them to defeat such a master without borrowing the heavenly Tao's power. At most, they would be slightly stronger than Huang Xiaolong and could be considered as the cream of the crop among peak heavenly venerables, but ultimately, they had yet to touch that boundary and reach the middle heavenly venerable realm. But such an expert was defeated by Yi Shiwen so easily. If they were in Yi Shiwen's shoes, would they be able to do it to this extent? Everyone began to ponder. They felt like they were getting to know Yi Shiwen all over again. However, just as they were pondering, the outcome of the battle between Yi Shiwen and the Divine Lion was also decided. The Divine Lion was blasted away on the spot. At the same time, the scales on its body completely exploded, and golden blood burst out. It was like a golden rain of blood. It was directly injured by Yi Shiwen. The Divine Lion was directly eliminated, and the only one left was the huge Titan. After Yi Shiwen dealt with the Divine Lion in one fell swoop, his body grew bigger and bigger. He directly used the magical power of Law World, becoming as big as the Titan. Then, he clenched his 5 fingers into a fist and directly punched towards the Titan as if it penetrated the chaos. The Titan's expression was solemn. Yi Shiwen actually dealt with 2 peak heavenly venerate experts in such a short time. He did not even give him the slightest chance to intervene. He knew that Yi Shiwen was a top-notch expert. It was as if he had been forced into a dead end. But since he had been forced to this point, there was no turning back. His dignity did not allow him to be defeated without a fight. Roar! The Titan roared and blasted out a punch as well. His punch met Yi Shiwen's punch from a distance, and then fiercely collided with it. Rumble! Endless blood energy exploded in an instant. All the spiritual energy between heaven and earth seemed to have erupted and directly swept into the depths of the chaos. The Titan was majestic and heroic. His black hair stood upside down. He was like a peerless expert. His whole body was emitting billions of golden rays, illuminating the entire ancient battlefield. This blow was actually a tie. Huff huff! The Titan was constantly panting. He wasn't at a disadvantage like the lion at the beginning. He was even able to fight evenly with Yi Shiwen at the beginning. However, he was extremely shocked in his heart. That was because his physical body cultivation had already reached great height. The physical body of the Titan race was renowned in many worlds. It was extremely powerful. Even so, he had used all of his powers, all of his skills, and all of them on his physical body cultivation. Yet, he could only fight to a draw with his opponent. Opposite him, Yi Shiwen stood with his hands behind his back. He was not panting at all. He looked completely at ease. Obviously, the consumption of both sides was not at the same level at all. Yi Shiwen was evenly matched with the Titan only by relying on the strength of his physical body. This was a completely different concept. On the other hand, Yi Shiwen looked excited. Even if he was only fighting with his physical body, there were not many people who could stop him. The physical cultivation of the Titan was indeed very strong. If Yi Shiwen had not practiced the meritorious tyrant form golden body, he would probably be on par with the Titan. However, it was different now. After integrating the meritorious chi, the physical cultivation of the Titan had increased by more than a little. Again, Yi Shiwen roared, and took the initiative to launch an attack. It was still a simple punch, and not even a little bit of divine radiance leaked out. It was obvious that his all-encompassing magic power had been sealed within his body. However, it was this simple and violent punch that made the Titan feel as if he was facing a great enemy. He retreated again and again, mustering all his strength and charging head-on. His fists were like cannons, fiercely bombarding out. Bang! There was another loud roar. The world shook. From the chaos, it even spread to the Fortune Divine Dynasty. Such power even made the expressions of many powerful celestial masters change. After the blow, Yi Shiwen did not move an inch in the endless energy tide. It was as if such an impact was nothing to him. On the other side, the Titan retreated several steps. The gap between them was obvious at a glance. But he did not give up. The blood flowing in the Titan's bones was warlike. This was a famous fighting race in many worlds and even many eras. He knew that Yi Shiwen would not kill him, so he gradually forgot his original purpose. He just wanted to fight to his heart's content. And Yi Shiwen obviously had the same intention. He sealed all his spiritual power and fought directly with his physical body. Even so, he was very strong. He could fight on par with a peak celestial master with just his physical body. This kind of terrifying combat power also made the eyelids of many celestial masters twitch. Many people thought to themselves, if it were them, how could they withstand Yi Shiwen's attack? Bang! 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 In the chaos, Yi Shiwen and the Titan showed the celestial masters and the emperors what was called the fighting style of a physical cultivator. Wild, direct, and sweeping. Simple and direct, but the power was terrifying. It was really shocking. Compared to any attack method in the world, it was not so direct or so hot-blooded. Finally, the winner was determined. Although the Titan Peak Celestial Master had done his best and mobilized all the spiritual power in his body to the limit, he was still far from Yi Shiwen. Such a gap was real, and it was not something he could close even if he tried his best. Even if Yi Shiwen did not use his full strength, he could not resist. Being able to fight until now was already a kind of limit. Bang! After a huge roar, the Titan was blasted away like the Metal Man and the Divine Lion. Dense cracks appeared on his body, and blood flowed out. Everyone could see that Yi Shiwen had shown mercy. Otherwise, things wouldn't have been so simple. Such injuries looked terrible, but they were actually flesh wounds. So, they would recover very quickly. Yi Shiwen defeated 3 peak Celestial Master experts in one breath. For a moment, his power was unparalleled. Some emperors did not even dare to look directly into his eyes. It was as if there was a big sun floating in the sky, and they could not look at him directly. The Titan recovered a little, but he could only return to the venue of the Celestial Master meeting through the passage. "Who else wants to come up and teach me?" asked Yi Shiwen lightly. Chapter 3743. For a time, everyone in the venue kept quiet out of fear. Everyone had witnessed Yi Shiwen's invincible might just now. He had defeated 3 peak heavenly venerables in a row. Such might also made them lose the possibility of fighting against Yi Shiwen. At this time, if he were to get involved, he would undoubtedly be asking to be humiliated. Since no one objects, I will temporarily replace the middle heavenly venerables to manage the entire Fortune God dynasty. Go all out and prepare for battle, Yi Shiwen said directly. Wait. Suddenly, at this moment, a voice resounded through the primal chaos. Everyone turned to look. This person was none other than the Heaven City Lord. Many people's hearts trembled. The Heaven City Lord was finally going to make a move. Many people began to plan in their hearts. The Heaven City Lord's reputation was widely known among the heavenly venerables and emperor lords. Although the city lords of the 10 great divine cities were evenly matched, they were all peak heavenly venerate level experts. However, in reality, everyone knew that the Heaven City Lord reigned supreme among the 10 divine cities of heaven: Earth, Mystic, Yellow, Universe, Chaos, Sun, and Moon. In this generation of the 10 divine cities, the Heaven City Lord was the strongest. It was said that he had already been the Heaven City Lord in the previous generation. He had always been the #1 expert in the 10 divine cities. The other city lords were basically his juniors. In fact, not many people had actually seen the Heaven City Lord in action. However, no one doubted his strength. When the middle heavenly venerable's position was vacant, the Heaven City Lord was the most likely candidate to replace it. However, Everyone knew that the Eastern Heavenly Venerables had appeared out of nowhere and snatched the Middle Heavenly Venerable's position. No one had the slightest ability to retaliate or prepare for it. Even the Heaven City Lord had been defeated by a Middle Heavenly Venerables. However, no one thought that the Heaven City Lord was weak. They all knew that the Heaven City Lord was strong. It was just that he had met his nemesis, an even stronger Middle Heavenly Venerables. In the end, he had suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of a Middle Heavenly Venerables. Even so, in everyone's hearts, the Heaven City Lord was still the #1 expert below the Middle Heavenly Venerables. Before he made a move, everything had yet to be settled. Yi Shiwen's performance just now was indeed amazing, but there were still many people who were optimistic about the Heaven City Lord. "Do you have any other opinions, City Lord?" Yi Shiwen faintly said. He didn't panic when he saw that it was the Heaven City Lord who jumped out. It was as if he had already expected this. But only Yi Shiwen himself knew that he had never thought that the Heaven City Lord would jump out, but this was much better than the worst-case scenario he had imagined. The worst-case scenario he had envisioned was for the 10 Divine Cities' City Lords to join forces and attack him. Even in that kind of situation, he had absolute confidence that he could control all the problems. This was the absolute confidence brought about by absolute strength. Unless it was a half-step sovereign realm expert, Yi Shiwen was confident that he could suppress anyone's resistance. In the Heavenly Venerable Realm, he wasn't afraid of anyone. Even if he faced a Middle Heavenly Venerable, he was confident that he could win. It's true that the army is preparing for war. I have no intention of refuting the decree of a Middle Heavenly Venerable, but Eastern Heavenly Venerable, you are still inexperienced. I think many people have doubts, so I would like to represent everyone and ask Eastern Heavenly Venerable for guidance. The Heaven City Lord said slowly. He wasn't aggressive, but the meaning behind his words was very clear. "Since you want to teach me, then come." Yi Shiwen didn't intend to say any more nonsense. No matter how tactful he was, he had still come to challenge the Heaven City Lord. The result would be the same whether he said or not. In an instant the entire primal chaos boiled, and a figure directly entered the primal chaos. It was the Heaven City Lord. A single figure directly caused the primal chaos to surge, showing signs of collapse. It was truly too oppressive. It could even be said that the primal chaos was more oppressive than the previous few peak Heavenly Venerables combined. The Heaven City Lord just looked at Yi Shiwen indifferently. His eyes were amber and looked incomparably deep. He stood tall in the primal chaos, exuding an unimaginable majesty. What kind of scene was this? It was simply unimaginable. A huge ripple of the great path spread out from his body. This ripple grew larger and larger, and the primal chaos chi began to tremble violently. Then, it instantly formed a monstrous force that wanted to drown Yi Shiwen. This was an extremely terrifying technique. It was one with heaven and earth, using the power of heaven and earth as its own power. An inexplicable aura spread out. This primal chaos chi turned into a monstrous force that crushed towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen merely opened and closed his eyes, and an inexhaustible mighty power spread out from them. It directly turned the inexhaustible chaotic energy into nothingness. Many Heavenly Venerables and Emperor Lords couldn't help but feel nervous. This was just the beginning, and the two of them had already exchanged blows. It seemed like neither of them had moved, but in terms of power, it had far exceeded the power of ordinary Heavenly Venerables. Many Heavenly Venerables felt a chill run down their spines. If they were in Yi Shiwen's place, it would be very difficult for them to resist. Little Crescent Moon began to feel nervous in her seat. Although she was very confident in her father's strength, this person was different. She hadn't been in the Fortune Realm for long, but she had already heard of the Heaven City Lord's fame many times. He was completely different from others. Among Heavenly Venerables, peak Heavenly Venerables were naturally the best. peak heavenly venerables who could hold a post in the Fortune God dynasty were the best among peak heavenly venerables. However, the Heaven City Lord could be considered the best among the Fortune God dynasty's supreme venerables. His strength was naturally self-evident. He was second only to the middle heavenly venerables. Could her father easily defeat such an opponent? Make your move. This kind of small trick can't do anything to me, Yi Shiwen said faintly. He didn't take the Heaven City Lord's trick to heart. For others, it might be a form of deterrence, but for him, it was simply too weak. The Heaven City Lord sighed faintly. He raised his hands and began to chant. With every syllable he chanted, the primal chaos of heaven and earth trembled. An endless, majestic power flowed into his body. The Heaven City Lord's entire body was emitting a frightening light. His aura grew stronger and stronger. Faintly, it began to merge with the power of the heavenly path. You shouldn't have let me finish chanting this incantation, the Heaven City Lord said to Yi Shiwen. I cultivate the path of sacrifice. It is one of the strongest great paths in the world. The major events of heaven and earth are for sacrifice and service. It doesn't matter. Use your strongest power. If I can't defeat you at your strongest, you won't be convinced. What's the point? Yi Shiwen said calmly. Although he didn't dare to say that he knew the Heaven City Lord like the back of his hand, he still knew a little about him. The Heaven City Lord came from an extremely ancient tribe. The people of this tribe believed in the heavens and used the path of sacrifice as their own cultivation path. This was very rare. It should be known that cultivators themselves went against the heavens. They took things from the heavens that shouldn't be theirs to obtain. However, the people of this tribe completely obeyed the heavens. They sacrificed to the heavens to obtain great power. Moreover, he really managed to walk a path that no one had ever walked before. Originally, it was just an ancient sacrificial method that evolved into a great path. He cultivated all the way to the peak of celestial venerables. He also made many people understand that the so-called obedience to the heavens could be achieved with just a thought. How great was the heavens! The heavens and earth were heartless and treated all living things like straw dogs. In the eyes of the heavenly path, all living things were the same. There was no such thing as obedience or disobedience. He actually opened up a cultivation path. Indeed, he could be said to be an unprecedented figure. However, Yi Shiwen was completely non-committal about this great path. Although it seemed like he could obtain great power, he relied too much on the heavenly path. The consequences of doing so were very obvious. Once he left the heavenly path, his strength would decrease by more than one level. Therefore, the Heaven City Lord rarely left the martial epoch to fight in the ancient epoch. Every time he went to war, he would be in charge of the rear defense. The restrictions were too great. Yi Shiwen's belief in martial arts was that he could not rely on anyone. Only his own strength was eternal support. Eastern Celestial Venerables, you are too confident. Compared to everyone else, you are young and proud. However, your confidence will sometimes become the fatal key to your failure. The Heaven City Lord said loudly. The aura on his body was getting stronger and stronger. He had completely integrated with the heavenly path. Every time he raised his hand or raised his foot, there was the coercion of the heavenly path. When he looked at Yi Shiwen, it was as if the heavenly path was staring at Yi Shiwen. It could bring great pressure to Yi Shiwen. However, Yi Shiwen still looked calm and relaxed in the face of such deterrence. He wasn't afraid of this kind of spiritual coercion. After all, he had the world tree inside his body. So, all spiritual attacks would disappear without a trace once they entered the world tree. I don't think I am too confident. As a strong person, I should have this kind of confidence, Yi Shiwen said confidently. He would not be shaken by the Heaven City Lord's words. The heavenly path takes away excess and makes up for deficiency. The Heaven City Lord looked at Yi Shiwen and recited the most ancient scripture. This was a scripture that had been passed down for generations. No one knew which era the master of which had created it, but it had fallen into his hands. As he chanted the scripture, his entire body exuded a terrifying aura. Suddenly, a powerful will descended from the primal chaos. That was the martial epoch's heavenly path will. Under the influence of this scripture, it had manifested and descended on the spot. Chapter 37:44. Using the power of the heavenly way to defeat a strong enemy was the Heaven City Lord's method. This was indeed an extreme method. Ordinary heavenly venerables could also draw upon or even change the power of the nomological laws for their own use. However, they could only use a portion of the nomological laws. No one could use all the nomological laws. Only the heavenly way could do so. This was because the heavenly way was a collection of everything. It was a combination of all rules and nomological laws. Therefore, the will of the heavenly way was also terrifying. It could directly descend with its will and kill all strong enemies. The Heaven City Lord's lips curled into a smile as he said, "You were wrong to ask me to do my best. I once used this move to kill a peak heavenly venerate." This was his method. He had absolute confidence that he was the only one in the world. No one could go against the heavens and earth. When he moved, he would feel as if the heavens and earth were going against him. Even a heavenly venerate couldn't withstand this terrifying pressure. This will couldn't be seen, but everyone could feel it. They could feel how terrifying the descending will was from the heavenly venerate main hall. Bang! The golden radiance emitted from Yi Shiwen's body suddenly shattered. There was no reason for it to shatter like this. No attack could be seen. Even if the heavens wanted to kill you, you would always reveal all sorts of flaws. These flaws were enough to kill you. Boom! A terrifying power surged from Yi Shiwen's body. All sorts of divine marks and nomological laws danced around. These were the martial arts nomological laws that Yi Shiwen cultivated. However, everyone was shocked to find that the divine marks, nomological laws, and nomological laws had all turned into chains that locked Yi Shiwen up. They simply wouldn't listen to his commands. All your comprehension comes from the heavenly way. You think that you control everything, but in fact, the heavenly way is the true ruler. It's fine if you don't use your Tao, but once you use it, it will be stripped away by the heavenly way. Geniuses are the most formidable and respectable rulers. You people keep saying that you are going against the heavens, but in fact you are all walking the wrong path. The Heaven City Lord said. The heavenly venerates had a pensive look on their faces. The Heaven City Lord's words had even shaken their Tao hearts. Indeed, whether it was the nomological laws they comprehended or the power they absorbed from the world, they all originated from the heavenly way. They claimed to be going against the heavens, but were they really going against the heavens? Wasn't everything still in the hands of the heavenly Tao? Many people suddenly felt a great terror, because they felt as if a huge cage had appeared in front of them. This cage was so terrifying that they felt that it was impossible to break out. In the end, everything was still in the hands of the heavenly Tao. Without the heavenly Tao, they were nothing. Even though Empyreans like them were known to surpass the rules and could directly modify the rules, they were ultimately still beneath the heavenly Tao. To them, this was a kind of confinement, a restraint on their souls. If one were to say that they didn't pay much attention to it initially, then the words of the Heaven City's City Lord were like a wake-up call to them. Is there really no way to break through the shackles of the heavenly Tao? We've been defying the heavens for our entire lives. What a joke! The heavenly Tao is the foundation of everything. We are also born under the heavenly Tao. Now you actually say that you want to go against the heavens. Don't you think it's ridiculous? Many people's Tao hearts were actually shaken. This was the most terrifying thing. For an Empyrean, having their Tao hearts shaken was even more terrifying than being heavily injured 8 or 10 times. Once their Tao hearts were shaken and they couldn't progress any further, it would be a small matter. The most terrifying thing was that their cultivation might rapidly regress overnight. This was originally impossible for Empyreans like them. Their mental cultivation had long reached the point where they could never retreat. They had never doubted the heavenly Tao that they had adhered to. In other words, these people were a group of paranoid maniacs. Now, the words of the Heaven City's City Lord had shaken these people. Yi Shiwen was facing the crushing pressure of the heavenly law at this time. All kinds of dreadful attacks emerged on the surface of his body. Fire, water, lightning, all kinds of imaginable and unimaginable attacks emerged on his body. Any Empyrean who could cultivate one of these attacks to the extreme would be regarded as an expert of a generation. Moreover, so many attacks appeared at the same time. How terrifying was this attack! This was the terrifying thing about the Heaven City's City Lord. Then, everyone saw the light of the magical law flying out from Yi Shiwen's body. This was the magical law being stripped out of his body by the heavenly Tao. All of this originated from the heavenly Tao. Now, the heavenly Tao was going to strip everything out. This was something that no Empyrean could resist. The Heaven City's City Lord had relied on this move to kill a peak Empyrean expert. Yi Shiwen looked at the Heaven City's City Lord. There was no expression on his face. He was just a little surprised. The Heaven City's City Lord had relied on this move to be on par with Middle Heavenly Venerables in terms of power. It was indeed very impressive. The nomological laws and heavenly Tao in his body were being stripped away, but he wasn't anxious. Instead, he said, "Heaven City's City Lord, I remember that when you fought with Middle Heavenly Venerables, you didn't have this kind of strength. Did you break through again during this time?" "That's right. After countless years, I have finally reached this step. I am only one step away from becoming a half-step ruler." The Heaven City's City Lord didn't deny it. He said, "As you said, since I have the ability, I should not pass on this responsibility. Since Middle Heavenly Venerables no longer have the ability to lead the Fortune God dynasty to defeat the foreign enemies, then I should let someone with the ability take over. I think I am qualified to do so." The Heaven City's City Lord also did not pass on this responsibility. He was very confident. "You shouldn't have let me use it. Of course, you didn't let me use it. In fact, you can't stop it. If you admit defeat now, I will let you go. You are also very strong. When we fight against the ancient era, you should play an important role." The Heaven City's City Lord looked at Yi Shiwen and said seriously, "Heaven City's City Lord, I think you are a little too confident." Yi Shiwen said, "You want to make arrangements now?" As he said this, everyone was shocked to find that Yi Shiwen, who was gradually being stripped of his heavenly Tao, suddenly stopped. In his body, the heavenly Tao that was being stripped away bit by bit was flowing back. "Although the source of all this is the heavenly Tao, since it has become mine, it is mine. No one can take it away." Yi Shiwen said, "City Lord of Heaven City, I am different from you. Everything I have cultivated bit by bit, comprehended bit by bit, without the slightest bit of trickery. It is impossible for anyone to deprive me of my Tao." Yi Shiwen's expression didn't show the slightest bit of frustration. Instead, he seemed to have gained a lot. Just now, when the Great Way left his body, he seemed to have entered a whole new realm. He finally understood why he couldn't break through to the half-step sovereign realm, no matter how hard he tried. He could only faintly touch this realm. Although half-step sovereign realm experts weren't in the sovereign realm, they were at least half a step into that realm. However, in order to truly enter the realm of a half-step ruler, he had to break away from the current system. Whether it was his strength or his comprehension, they all came from the heavenly Tao. Therefore, he was trapped in the cage of the heavenly Tao. Ordinary people naturally couldn't feel it. It was still too far away for them. However, Yi Shiwen was a top-notch expert, and he had already touched that layer of ceiling. Only great destruction can lead to great establishment. Only by breaking away from the restraints of the martial epic's heavenly Tao could he break through to the legendary half-step sovereign realm. Of course, half-step sovereigns didn't completely break away from the heavenly Tao. Therefore, they would die with the epic. The epic made them strong, but at the same time, it also restricted them. Those half-step sovereigns who gradually aged could only wait for death because they couldn't break away from the restraints of the heavenly Tao. This was an extremely terrifying situation. The reason why they wanted to destroy the martial epic was to obtain a powerful force from the martial epic that could help them break away from the heavenly Tao. The ancient epic's heavenly Tao might not seem like much, and it could even continuously give birth to new life forms and experts. However, only when one reached that stage would one understand that the entire ancient epic's heavenly Tao contained a kind of death chi. It was invisible and untouchable. The power of death pulled them towards death. This power of death grew stronger and stronger, to the point that even half-step sovereigns couldn't resist it. At that time, half-step sovereigns would fall. The power of death existed invisibly, and there was nothing they could do to resist it. It was like how ordinary living beings, after vindicating their Tao and becoming gods, would understand the true meaning of death. Only then would they be able to escape death and live as long as heaven and earth. It was the same for these half-step sovereigns. To resist this power of death, unless they could break through to the sovereign realm, it was only a matter of time before they died. Only great destruction could lead to great establishment. Only now did Yi Shiwen understand this principle. In other words, he finally found the path to becoming a half-step sovereign. Although it sounded simple, in reality, it trapped most peak heavenly venerate. Even if they understood what to do, only a few could do it, as it was too difficult. In an epoch, many peak heavenly venerates were born, and many people touched that realm. However, the number of people who truly became half-step sovereigns could be counted on one hand. The difficulty was easy to imagine. You've made me understand many things. This battle should end here. Chapter 37:45. You've made me understand a lot of things. This battle should end here. Yi Shiwen finally moved. He was no longer just passively accepting things like before. The martial venerate's seal appeared above his head and rotated, suppressing the chaos in all directions. Boom! Yi Shiwen's body erupted with endless magical power from the void. The golden magical power was boiling and spreading out like a vast ocean. 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Yi Shiwen's fist blasted upwards and directly blasted into the powerful heavenly will. Although ordinary people couldn't see or touch it, this wasn't the case for a heavenly venerate, especially since he already had the possibility of being killed after manifesting. Yi Shiwen had already killed countless incarnations of the heavenly will during his previous tribulation transcendence. Yi Shiwen naturally wouldn't have been able to contend against the entire heavenly will. However, a mere wisp of it was nothing. Rumble! Everyone could see the entire chaos shaking. The manifested heavenly will had actually been blasted into nothingness by Yi Shiwen's fist. This fist was really too terrifying. The fist energy caused the sky and earth to crack and the chaos to sink into this fist. This was Yi Shiwen's true eruption. Many heavenly venerates couldn't help but change their expressions when they saw this scene. This terrifying power was much more terrifying than the heavenly will summoned by the Sky City Lord. This is his true strength. The southern heavenly venerate, the northern heavenly venerate, and the others were also shocked. After Yi Shiwen displayed his true strength, they realized that their previous estimation of him had been fundamentally wrong. Among these people, the person whose mood had changed the most was none other than the current Moon City Lord, Spacetime Heavenly Venerate. Although he had been defeated by Yi Shiwen in the previous battle and failed to obtain the Eastern Heavenly Venerate position, he had still been considered to be on the same level, so he had been honorably defeated. However, only a short period of time had passed. After becoming the Moon City Lord, He had relied on the huge destiny of the Fortune Divine Dynasty to advance to the 9th level of Heavenly Venerate. Although he was still far from being a peak Heavenly Venerate, this kind of progress was already very shocking. At this rate, it would only be a matter of time before he entered the ranks of peak Heavenly Venerables. However, when he saw Yi Shiwen again, not only had Yi Shiwen's combat power reached the peak Celestial Master realm that he yearned for, but he had even surpassed it. Yi Shiwen's starting point was almost the same. In fact, Yi Shiwen's starting point was even lower than his. However, Yi Shiwen was now ahead of him. Perhaps some people were born different. On the other side, the Heaven City Lord was shocked to see that Yi Shiwen was able to resist his own heaven's will and even kill it. However, his expression didn't change at all. He had been domineering his entire life and had never been afraid of anyone. Even among the 10 great divine cities castellans, he was one of the most respected ones. "Heaven's will is like a blade," he roared. His palm grabbed out from the void and a long saber appeared. It was incomparably sharp. He had actually condensed his heaven's will into a long saber. It was extremely terrifying. He slashed out with this saber. In terms of saber cultivation, he wasn't inferior to Demon Venerable Luoho. It was extremely terrifying. He had been domineering his entire life. Although Yi Shiwen had displayed terrifying combat power, he didn't back down at all. The long saber in his hand burst out with billions of immortal lights, directly destroying a large area of chaos. In an instant it had already slashed towards Yi Shiwen. Refining heaven's will into a saber? That's an interesting method. As soon as Yi Shiwen's voice fell, the saber fell completely. It crossed more than half of the chaos and landed on his body. Clang! There was a huge roar. The martial venerable seal above Yi Shiwen's head flew out and emitted countless rays of nomological laws. They interweaved into a large net and blocked the saber. At this time, Yi Shiwen directly attacked. At this time, there was no longer anything to hide. He attacked with a peerless fist technique. He didn't use any weapons. In fact, he himself was a peerless weapon. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen took a step and arrived in front of the Heaven City Lord. This was an ability that he hadn't displayed in front of everyone yet. It was his extraordinary speed. Many people didn't expect him to be this fast. Even the Heaven City Lord didn't expect this. Even the Heaven City Lord didn't expect this amazing speed. It even made him think of Middle Heavenly Venerables. He regarded Middle Heavenly Venerables as his greatest opponent. Naturally, he had some understanding of Middle Heavenly Venerables' technique. There was nothing special about Middle Heavenly Venerables' technique. They just relied on their own powerful physique cultivation and their amazing speed to form a set of attack methods that were difficult to match in the world. Now Yi Shiwen had rushed in front of him in an instant. There was no other method. He just blasted out a simple punch and directly destroyed the entire desolate chaotic border, turning this place into a true danger zone. The Heaven City Lord didn't even have time to retract his Heaven's Will saber. He was almost defenseless when Yi Shiwen rushed in front of him. Bang! An incomparably loud roar was accompanied by a huge collision. Billions of immortal lights and auspicious colors collided together, illuminating the entire chaos. Thump, thump, thump. This blow instantly determined the outcome of the battle. The Heaven City Lord retreated again and again. He was at a disadvantage in this exchange with Yi Shiwen. His entire arm was trembling. Yi Shiwen's punch was much more terrifying than he had imagined. This kind of attack was too similar to Middle Heavenly Venerables. Similarly, unparalleled speed coupled with a tyrannical body made him invincible. However, Yi Shiwen was clearly more dangerous than Middle Heavenly Venerables. This was because these weren't his trump cards, nor were they the entirety of his attack. Again, Yi Shiwen blasted out another punch. The fist energy traversed more than half of the chaos. The Heaven City Lord had just stabilized from the previous attack. Before he could completely stabilize himself, he was forced to take on Yi Shiwen's punch again. This time, the Heaven City Lord was in an even more sorry state than before. Blood splattered from his chest. This was the result of Yi Shiwen's punch. He staggered and slid across the chaotic universe for tens of millions of miles before coming to a stop. He had suffered a heavy blow. All his internal organs were about to explode. Blood was dripping everywhere, but it hadn't seeped through the surface of his body. However, blood still flowed from the corners of his mouth and continuously dripped into the chaos. All of his defenses were completely defenseless in front of Yi Shiwen's fist. The difference was just too great. All the heavenly venerables were also waiting for the outcome of this battle. They didn't even dare to blink. This was because they knew very well that the outcome of this battle would likely determine who the true master of the Fortune God dynasty would be for a period of time. Eastern Heavenly Venerate Yi Shiwen, or the Heaven City Lord. This was a confrontation between these two giants. However, it was clear that the two of them didn't erupt into a fierce battle as everyone had imagined. The intensity of the battle was indeed high enough. Any blow from either side could seriously injure or even kill an ordinary heavenly venerate. This showed that both sides had combat strength that far exceeded that of an ordinary heavenly venerate. However, the two sides weren't evenly matched. The Heaven City Lord was already showing signs of defeat at the start of the battle. Yi Shiwen didn't hold back. Instead, he rushed forward again. His fists swept out like two golden dragons and directly struck the Heaven City Lord. In an instant, the Heaven City Lord vomited blood as he was sent flying by Yi Shiwen. The injuries on his body were even more severe than before. "Admit defeat," Yi Shiwen said faintly. "You won't be a match for me. Continuing to fight like this won't do you any good." The Heaven City Lord steadied himself and looked at Yi Shiwen. There was a flash of indignation in his eyes. He could also see that if this continued, he would only be easily defeated by Yi Shiwen. In terms of conventional strength, Yi Shiwen was much stronger than him. Even if he didn't admit this, there was no way he could deny it. He didn't know how Yi Shiwen was so strong, but he didn't have much time left. The Heaven City Lord wasn't willing to lose just like this. He had planned for so long and endured for so long before he finally had this opportunity. He was going to fight one last time. As he thought of this, he couldn't help but roar. Suddenly, countless heavenly will appeared and instantly entered his body. In an instant, the entire primal chaos was ignited. However, it wasn't flames that ignited everything. Instead, it was a terrifying forbidden technique that was formed from the power of the heavens and earth. Blood dripped from the Heaven City Lord's body. The blood dyed the primal chaos golden and then began to burn. Then, the flames spread out too quickly. There was no time or opportunity for anyone to dodge. In an instant, Yi Shiwen was drowned. There was no way for him to dodge. The Heaven City Lord's body exploded and then reassembled. In the process of this explosion and reassembly, he was severely injured and his vitality was damaged. He stared in Yi Shiwen's direction. This was his final attack. The forbidden technique could ignite everything. With the power of heavenly will, it was enough to defeat and even kill any strong enemy. However, to his disappointment, after the chaotic tide ignited by the forbidden technique dissipated, Yi Shiwen's figure stood still in the universe. It seemed that the forbidden technique hadn't been able to hurt Yi Shiwen at all. The light of Yi Shiwen's chi of virtue was so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. With the protection of the chi of virtue, this kind of attack couldn't hurt Yi Shiwen at all. Seeing this, the fire of ambition in the eyes of the Sky City Lord dissipated. "I admit defeat." After a sigh, the Heaven City Lord's figure disappeared into the primal chaos. Chapter 3746. All the celestial masters were silent. This result was within their expectations. Many celestial masters already had an answer when Yi Shiwen defeated the Three Peaks celestial masters. However, he was able to defeat the Heaven City Lord with such a fast speed and overwhelming advantage. This was the fundamental reason why they couldn't accept it for a while. It was simply too terrifying. Yi Shiwen stepped out of the chaos and returned to the main hall. He sat on the throne, looked at everyone, and said, "I think everyone should be satisfied now. Is there anyone else who wants to give me some pointers?" Yi Shiwen glanced at everyone, and everyone suddenly became speechless. Yi Shiwen indeed had the strength to suppress all outstanding heroes. If they jumped out at this time, then it wouldn't just be opposing Yi Shiwen, but provoking him instead. At this time, they finally understood why the Middle Holy Master chose Yi Shiwen as his supporter. It was not because he was stupid, nor was it because Yi Shiwen was his confidant. It was because Yi Shiwen really had such terrifying strength. Compared to the previous Middle Heavenly Master, Yi Shiwen was probably stronger, not weaker. Although everyone had doubts in their hearts about how to end the battle between the two powerhouses, it was obvious from the situation that Yi Shiwen had mentioned that it was not the time to talk about this problem. In that case, I will temporarily take over the power of the Fortune God dynasty. In the future, if you have any problems, you can report to me. Yi Shiwen said, "Don't ignore what I said before. Because this time, if we fail, not only will we pay with our lives, the entire Fortune God dynasty and even the entire martial arts era will be buried with us." Everyone's expression became more dignified. After solving the problem of the leader, they thought further. Regardless of whether they were convinced by Yi Shiwen as the temporary leader, regardless of whether they had any grudges with Yi Shiwen, they were unanimous in facing the attack of the ancient era. "Everyone, go back and get ready. Wait for my decree at any time. This battle may happen at any time. I don't know when it will happen. It may happen in the next moment, or it may happen countless years later." Yi Shiwen said, "But I hope that everyone will be ready to go at that time." Yi Shiwen did not make any strategic arrangements because he knew that it was meaningless. In the end, they had to defeat the other side with absolute strength. In a war of this level, any kind of plan would not be very useful. If those ancient epics could not annihilate the martial epics Heavenly Tao, no matter how powerful the half-step sovereign realm experts were, they would not be able to defeat the Fortune Divine Dynasty. On the other hand, if the Fortune God Dynasty could not defeat the half-step sovereign experts, then it would be meaningless no matter how many ordinary ancient era experts they killed. Because the deciding factor was never the ordinary experts, but the true top experts. The results of the Heavenly Venerables Assembly also spread throughout the Fortune God Dynasty, along with the return of various Heavenly Venerables and Emperors. Of course, it was impossible for everyone in the Fortune God Dynasty to know about it. At most, only a few Emperors and Emperor Realm Masters knew about the ancient era's invasion and were preparing for the final battle. Even if the Heavenly Venerables and Emperors could escape, the results of the Heavenly Venerables Conference spread throughout the Fortune God Dynasty. Of course, not everyone in the Fortune God Dynasty knew about it. At most, only a few Emperors and Quasi-Emperor experts knew about the ancient era's invasion and were preparing for the final battle. Even if they had not experienced the War of the Era, it did not mean that they did not know how cruel it was. It was not a war of annihilation, nor was it a war of annihilation, but a war of annihilation. The Heavenly Venerables Conference, this time, had confirmed the person in charge of the Fortune God Dynasty. It was obvious that this person was the Eastern Heavenly Venerables, Marshal Exalt Yi Shiwen. After the original Middle Heavenly Venerables suffered serious injuries, no one knew how long it would take for him to recover. Before that, the entire Fortune God Dynasty was in Yi Shiwen's hands. After confirming his position, Yi Shiwen moved his office from the Eastern Heavenly Venerables' residence to the Fortune God capital. The situation of the entire Fortune God Dynasty was still very stable, just like when the Middle Heavenly Venerables were still around. At the same time, Yi Shiwen also began to make the final preparations for the upcoming decisive battle. In addition to handling various matters of the Fortune God dynasty, he also secretly dispatched many Heavenly Master experts to the chaos. It was for no other reason than to be able to grasp the movements of those ancient eras as soon as possible. This was to prevent them from being caught off guard. If those ancient epochs wanted to destroy the martial epoch, they would have to make a huge move. Just a few half-step sovereigns would not be enough to take down the entire martial epoch. Hence, it would be easy to find out what was going on. After dealing with the matters of the Eastern Territory, Western Territory, Central Territory, and even the entire Fortune God dynasty, Yi Shiwen finally had the time to look for the War Venerables. He wanted to know what kind of trump cards the Fortune God dynasty had left behind to deal with those half-step sovereigns. The War Venerables did not say much, but led Yi Shiwen to the deepest part of the Fortune God capital, in front of an incomparably huge treasure vault. This treasure vault's door towered into the clouds, actually tens of millions of zhang tall. After the War Venerables formed a hand seal, the entire door slowly opened. In an instant, endless treasure light directly surged out, unexpectedly forming a wave. This is the largest treasure vault in the Fortune God dynasty. Only Middle Heavenly Venerables have the authority to enter, even I cannot enter. However, you are temporarily acting as a Middle Heavenly Venerables, so you can enter. The War Venerables glanced at Yi Shiwen and said, "In the deepest part of this treasure vault, there is a treasure robe called the Good Fortune Treasure Robe. This Good Fortune Treasure Robe was refined by the Fortune Heavenly Monarch before he became a sovereign. After he achieved Tao, this Good Fortune Treasure Robe was sealed inside." The War Venerables said, "The attacks of half-step sovereigns are very terrifying. Only with the Good Fortune Treasure Robe can you contend against them. Previously, you also wore the Energy Treasure Robe of the Eastern Heavenly Venerables. In fact, that Energy Treasure Robe is actually a replica of the Good Fortune Treasure Robe." And Yi Shiwen nodded. Even without the War Venerables saying this, he knew how terrifying the attacks of half-step sovereigns were. After all, he had seen it with his own eyes. With his current strength, he could not withstand such an attack. It was not that his golden body of virtue was too weak, but because the attacks of half-step sovereigns were actually existences of another realm, completely above his existence. In addition to this Good Fortune Treasure Robe, there is also a sword called the Sword of Destiny. It is a Tao tool that the former Middle Heavenly Venerables carried with him. Later, it was also left here. Only by subduing the Sword of Destiny can you truly have the possibility of injuring or even killing those half-step sovereigns. The War Venerables said. Yi Shiwen nodded. So, this was the trump card of the Fortune God dynasty. With these two supreme Tao tools, one for attack and one for defense, they indeed had the possibility of contending against half-step sovereigns. However, although these two Tao tools are powerful, they still have a flaw. Unless you have also stepped into the half-step sovereign's realm, you will consume a lot of energy. Within a certain range, you can obtain the blessing of the Fortune God capital and continuously replenish your energy. However, once the distance is too far, you won't be able to replenish your energy. Therefore, although these two Tao tools are powerful, they can only be used as a defensive power for so many years. The War Venerables continued to explain. After listening to the War Venerables' explanation, all of Yi Shiwen's doubts were cleared. No wonder the Middle Heavenly Venerables were not anxious at all, even though they knew that the Chaos Overlord might come out. With such a trump card, the Middle Heavenly Venerables could indeed ignore the Chaos Overlord. Although the Chaos Overlord might put the Fortune God dynasty in a difficult situation, that was all. They could not advance any further. All these years, our Fortune Divine dynasty has always had a trump card to contend against half-step sovereigns. However, this time situation is different. Several half-step sovereigns have come personally. Originally, it wasn't a big deal. Under normal circumstances, if an ancient era's half-step sovereign dares to enter our martial epoch, they will be suppressed by the martial epoch's heavenly Tao. At that time, not only can we defeat them one by one, we can even kill them all. The Zhan Zun glared and said fiercely. He wished he could kill those half-step sovereigns with his own hand. Unfortunately, he knew that his cultivation was too low. He was no match for them. He could only pin his hopes on Yi Shiwen. But now, those half-step sovereigns are clearly planning to kill our martial epoch's heavenly Tao. Once they succeed, no one can stop them. Don't worry, this time I will stop them, Yi Shiwen said. In this battle, there was no way out. He could only fight with his full strength. Even if it was not for others, he had to do it for his family, his friends and family. After speaking, Yi Shiwen took a step forward and directly entered it. He was immediately submerged in the endless treasure light. Eastern Heavenly Venerables, I'm counting on you this time, the War Venerables said as they watched Yi Shiwen disappear in the boundless treasure light. Yi Shiwen directly entered the boundless treasure light and directly opened his heavenly eye. He finally saw the situation in the entire treasury. He saw all kinds of super treasures that were rarely seen in the outside world floating in the air. Many of them had even formed their own intelligence and turned into extremely powerful treasure demons. Chapter 3747. These powerful treasure demons, if placed in the outside world, could easily compete with an emperor, and some could even compete with a heavenly venerable. They were extremely terrifying and powerful. But this was not surprising, because many of these treasure demons' bodies were Tao tools, and many were even heavenly venerable Tao tools. These were the Tao tools of the masters who were killed by the Fortune God dynasty during its establishment, and some of them were even heavenly venerable Tao tools. This huge treasury itself was a blessed land of the heavens and earth. It gathered an endless amount of spirit qi. Under the nourishment of this spirit qi, these magic tools did not lose their luster after losing their masters. On the contrary, they evolved from weapon spirits to treasure demons. Although they were both artifacts, artifact spirits and treasure demons were different. Artifact spirits took the master's will as the first standard and were controlled by the master. However, treasure demons had already developed their own will and were not controlled by anyone. Powerful treasure demons were everywhere, and Yi Shiwen even saw a world. These treasure demons were like the almighties of the outside world, giving lectures and imparting powerful grand Taos. Powerful countries and powerful sects were formed in these worlds. In fact, there was no difference from the outside world. This was a world of treasure demons. But as soon as Yi Shiwen's aura entered, it alarmed the treasure demons inside the treasure trove. Different from the low-level treasure demons, these treasure demons were almighties. They did not eat flesh and blood, but absorbed spiritual energy to cultivate the grand Taos. Within their bodies, there was a powerful great Tao left behind by their former masters. As long as they cultivated according to it, they could reach an extremely impressive realm. In addition, their bodies were also very powerful. This was the reason why they could stand shoulder to shoulder with imperial emperors and even heavenly venerables. The Fortune God dynasty's foundation is indeed deep and frightening. Although on the surface it doesn't seem like the Fortune God dynasty has a lot of forces, but in fact, the strength hidden in the dark is terrifying. At a critical moment, these treasure demons can become the Fortune God dynasty's trump card. Once released, it's more than enough to destroy one of the foreign domains. Yi Shiwen naturally understood as he watched from the dark. He released his formidable coercion, and all the treasure demons along the way knelt down one after another. They didn't dare to contend against him. Whether it was an emperor or an heavenly venerable, there was no difference. Why haven't I seen this person before? The middle Empyrean that came before didn't look like this. Why is there another one? Did something happen to the Fortune Divine Dynasty? Why are they changing so frequently recently? I don't know what's going on, but it looks like this person's aura is even more tyrannical than that middle heavenly venerate from before. Although these treasure demons were confined to this world, it didn't mean that they didn't know anything. This was because they were treasure demons that were disguised by Tao artifacts, or even Empyrean Tao artifact spirits. Therefore, they also had the memories of previous artifact spirits, and naturally understood what the Fortune Divine Dynasty was. It was an incomparably powerful giant, and the ones who ruled over it were the Supremes. The Middle Empyreans were their leaders. It could be said that even they were under the rule of a Middle Heavenly Venerate. Only a Middle Heavenly Venerate could enter this place, so they could only crawl down out of habit. Moreover, this person had an unimaginably terrifying power. It was as if they would die if they were just glanced at. It was too terrifying, and they didn't even dare to look up. Yi Shiwen's gaze swept across this world. He didn't pay attention to these ordinary treasure demons. Although these treasure demons represented Tao tools, and even heavenly master Tao tools, they didn't have any significance to him at the moment. Soon, many people discovered that this newly arrived Middle Heavenly Venerate seemed to be looking for something. This treasure house was filled with treasure energy. There were all kinds of barriers and arrays everywhere. Even if a Heavenly Venerate was here, it would be impossible to see everything clearly. Yi Shiwen's gaze swept over the kingdoms and sects of the treasured demons. They were exactly the same as the outside world, but each of them was different. This had a lot to do with the great Tao left behind by their previous masters. Looking at the kingdoms and sects of these treasure demons was a bit of an eye-opener for Yi Shiwen. Everyone who was able to reach the extreme Tao realm, even if it was an Emperor realm expert, had their own uniqueness. With Yi Shiwen's current cultivation, he naturally understood wherever he saw. He suddenly felt that it was quite beneficial to his great Tao. However, his main goal was not these treasure demons, but the good fortune treasure robe and the sword of fate. He didn't think that it was difficult to find them. These two, according to the quality, were completely superior to other Tao artifacts. It shouldn't be difficult to distinguish them. As long as he could find them, the rest would be simple. Yi Shiwen's gaze swept across the entire treasure house, and he could see through the secrets behind the layers of barriers and arrays. Soon, Yi Shiwen found one of them. It was an evolved sword principle world. This sword principle world was almost like an evolved real world. In this sword world, living beings were born. These living beings were born with sword energy. They were born to be sword masters, and even powerful ones could be comparable to emperors. However, they were only comparable to emperors. There was no way they could be compared to emperors. This was because they were all living beings born from this world of the way of the sword. Their great Tao laws were not complete, so it could be said that they had cultivated to their current level through unorthodox means. And no matter how powerful they seemed, they still had fatal flaws in the end. After a certain period of time, they would naturally die of old age. They couldn't be like emperors who could live as long as the world. However, every time a living being evolved that was comparable to an imperial lord, it was equivalent to evolving a brand new path of the sword Tao. For the entire sword world, it was equivalent to adding another great Tao. If it continued to evolve like this, it might evolve into a complete world in the future. This method could be said to be in defiance of the natural order. Just like the replacement of an era, every time an era was destroyed, the laws of the entire world would be more perfected. Although the heavenly law that appeared next time would not be the same, it would obviously be more perfected. However, compared to the replacement of an era, the replacement process of this sword principle world was much faster. However, this could also be regarded as a righteous great Tao. Yi Shiwen looked at it for a while, and then directly entered this world. When Yi Shiwen entered this world, it immediately caused a commotion. This world seemed to be in front of him, but in fact, its real location was in layers of space. Moreover, there were supreme powerhouses guarding it. Even celestial masters couldn't break in like this. After Yi Shiwen entered this world of swordsmanship, he walked along the way and looked around. This world was not illusory, but real. Naturally, it had its own uniqueness. Soon, a figure appeared in front of Yi Shiwen's eyes. It was a tall and straight figure with a treasured sword on his back. His eyes were like the eyes of an eagle, and they were scanning the surroundings. Everything in the world was seen by him. He was like the incarnation of sword. Yi Shiwen was actually very familiar with this temperament. His sword incarnation was actually like this, but the aura of the sword venerable was far less tyrannical than this person in front of him. "Friend, where did you come from?" This person looked at Yi Shiwen. His tone was also like sword, incomparably sharp and unstoppable. "I came from outer space. As for why I came, I think you should be very clear." Yi Shiwen didn't beat around the bush and said directly. This was because he had already seen that this person should not be anyone else. It should be the tool spirit of the Sword of Fate, which had now turned into a treasure demon. "You are this generation's middle heavenly master?" "No, he just came some time ago." "Don't tell me that he is already dead." The tool spirit of the Sword of Fate also said bluntly. "I am not the new middle heavenly master. I am this generation's eastern heavenly master, but now I need your strength." Yi Shiwen said bluntly. "Why should I help you?" The tool spirit of the Sword of Fate also said bluntly. "Because you have no choice. If you don't choose to help me, I will erase your original spirit, and then you will die." Yi Shiwen looked at the other party and said, "It can be said to be a great miracle that you can cultivate to this point. I also don't want to destroy such a miracle, but I also have no choice. If you insist on being stubborn, I can only erase your original spirit." Yi Shiwen didn't want to destroy such a famous miracle, but it didn't mean that he could tolerate the other party's willfulness. Now that the martial arts era was about to be destroyed, anyone who stood in his way would die. However, it was obvious that Yi Shiwen's words were not able to make the tool spirit of the Sword of Fate surrender. "How dare you? Even a middle heavenly master wouldn't dare to speak to me like this." The tool spirit of the Sword of Fate roared, unable to restrain his anger. He had an incomparably noble status. He was the Tao tool of the former middle heavenly master. If he appeared outside, he would almost be a supreme master like the Eastern Heavenly Master. Who would dare to speak to him like this? "I gave you face, but you don't want it. I gave you face because I was giving face to the former Middle Heavenly Master. Do you really think that you have that much face?" Yi Shiwen said with a sneer. "How dare you?" The tool spirit of the Sword of Fate suddenly became extremely angry. Clang! The long sword on his back moved, and in an instant, the entire world shook violently. Many sword spirits in this world of swordsmanship crawled on the ground, trembling, and didn't dare to move at all. Chapter 37:48. When the sword was unsheathed, the heavens fell and the earth cracked. Ghosts wailed and gods howled. This was the sword that once belonged to a middle heavenly venerate. That middle heavenly venerate had used the Sword of Fate to sever fate and suppress all resistance in the world. He was the Fortune Heavenly Monarch's follower, and he was the second person to step into the half-step sovereign realm after the Fortune Heavenly Monarch. The power of the Sword of Fate was unimaginable. Not only was the sword stained with the blood of emperors and heavenly venerables, it was also stained with the blood of half-step sovereign realm experts. What kind of glorious existence was this? With just this sword, no one dared to underestimate his existence. There is no reason for my Tao to yield to others. Since you want my sword, you can exchange your life for it. The spirit of the Sword of Fate erupted. With a roar, the world shook and cracks appeared everywhere. This world of sword Tao that had been built for countless years completely collapsed at this moment. The sword Tao creatures turned into countless rays of light and returned to the body of the sword of fate, causing its power to soar to a terrifying level. One sword could seriously injure or even kill a peak heavenly venerable. If it was in the hands of a middle heavenly venerable, the power would be unimaginable. It wasn't without reason that the Sword of Fate's artifact spirit was so confident. Ordinary peak Empyreans weren't a match for it. In this world of the treasury, it was enough to proclaim itself as a king. It could continuously evolve the world of Sword Tao until it transcended. It might even have the chance to step into the half-step sovereign realm. This was a great opportunity, but the heavens gave everyone the same trial. If the spirit of the Sword of Fate wanted to step into the half-step sovereign realm like its master, it had to face many tribulations. Even Yi Shiwen could guess that he had become one of these tribulations. He didn't want to destroy this miracle, but since the spirit of the Sword of Fate was so stubborn, he had no other choice. Boom! A terrifying aura burst out from Yi Shiwen's body. The monstrous aura shocked many of the treasure demons in the treasury. Many treasure demons were trembling. This was a battle at the peak. Even though their original bodies were Tao artifacts of extreme experts and could be considered experienced and knowledgeable, in front of these two auras, they could only crawl on the ground. There was no other possibility. It's that outsider. Did he go against the Sword of Destiny? Sure enough, an expert at his level would have seen all kinds of treasures and divine materials. Therefore, he couldn't have come for us. If it's not the Great Fortune Robe, then it's the Sword of Destiny. What has happened in the outside world? The Sword of Fate has been here for many years, and the Fortune Divine Dynasty has never shown any intention of letting the Sword of Fate out. But now they actually sent a Middle Empyrean to subdue the Sword of Fate. Something earth-shattering must have happened. Since the Sword of Destiny has been found, the Great Fortune Robe won't be able to escape. Judging by the pace, it's very likely to be used to deal with half-step sovereigns. Although this person is very strong, whether it's the Sword of Fate or the Great Fortune Robe, I'm afraid that they won't just let him be. When that time comes, there will be another great battle. The treasure demons in the world of the treasury withdrew from their own worlds, their own countries, and their own sections. However, in the void, their divine senses were constantly communicating. For them, this matter was equally shocking. Clang! The Sword of Destiny was finally unsheathed, and a burst of buzzing sounds erupted. In an instant, a 10-million-meter-long torrent of Sword Tao directly bombarded towards Yi Shiwen. Refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, Yi Shiwen didn't move at all. Above his head, the martial sovereign seal continuously rotated, directly resisting this astonishing torrent of Sword Tao. This torrent of Sword Tao couldn't hurt Yi Shiwen. Meanwhile, Yi Shiwen directly rushed towards the tool spirit of the Sword of Fate. He didn't try to resist the Sword of Destiny head-on. Although his virtuous tyrant form was tyrannical, it wasn't worth it to resist head-on. If the Sword of Destiny could be so easily resisted, then it wouldn't have caught his attention. That's why he specifically came here to look for its value. He chose to defeat the spirit of the Sword of Destiny. If there was a weakness of the Sword of Destiny, then it would undoubtedly be this spirit. 6 Paths of Reincarnation Fist. Yi Shiwen roared, and a huge 6 paths of reincarnation formed behind him. The wheel constantly rotated, and with every rotation, endless power poured into Yi Shiwen's arm, transforming into terrifying power. This fist pierced through the heavens and the earth. This fist directly triggered reincarnation, directly crushing the heavens and the earth, and directly rushed towards the spirit of the Sword of Destiny. The spirit of the Sword of Destiny instantly felt the terrifying threat of Yi Shiwen's fist. If it was hit by Yi Shiwen's fist, it would most likely be killed. You're courting death. The spirit of the Sword of Destiny revealed a somewhat sinister smile. However, it wasn't the slightest bit afraid. In its life, it had followed the former Middle Heavenly Master and defeated too many strong enemies. As it waved the sword of destiny in its hand, in an instant, billions of splashes of brilliance splashed out, filling the entire space. The sword light directly met the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Clang! A loud roar sounded, and the sword light slashed on the fist. The sword of destiny broke through the 6 paths of reincarnation, and with unparalleled strength, it fell on Yi Shiwen's fist without losing any momentum. Drip, drip, blood dripped from the fist. Yi Shiwen's fist was cut open, and blood dripped from the wound. As expected of the sword of destiny, it can actually injure me, Yi Shiwen said with a mischievous smile. In fact, he couldn't remember when was the last time he was injured. Most of his injuries were actually caused by using the supreme ancestral symbol, which caused him to injure himself. It was very rare to be injured by an outsider, especially after cultivating the meritorious tyrant form golden body. This kind of situation was even rarer. Even if it was an ordinary Heavenly Master Dao tool, he could forcibly resist it without being injured. And the sword of destiny could injure him. Most importantly, Yi Shiwen also knew that the sword of destiny could only display its basic power. If it was in the hands of the former Middle Heavenly Master, it would be truly invincible, and no one would be able to stop it. Yi Shiwen was slightly surprised, but even more surprised was that the spirit of the sword of destiny opposite him could only cut Yi Shiwen's skin with his full strength. In his estimation, the sword should have directly cut off Yi Shiwen's arm. If it was an ordinary Heavenly Master, he would have been cut in half along with the entire body. He was too confident in the amazing power of the sword of destiny. The more he knew about the power of the sword of destiny, the more confident he was. He didn't expect Yi Shiwen to be able to block it with his bare hands. He was simply a monster. In the world of the treasure house, he had been unrivaled for many years. Except for the good fortune treasure robe, who could stop his edge, he didn't expect that there would be such a person in the outside world. Even when the former Middle Heavenly Master was still in power, when the Fortune God dynasty was at its peak and full of talents, there were only a few people who could stop the edge of the sword of destiny. The power of the sword of destiny is indeed good. Unfortunately, it has lost a master, and its power is greatly reduced for no reason. What a pity! Yi Shiwen faintly smiled. The skin on his fist squirmed unceasingly, pushing out the sword chi. His injury was restored to its original state. It wasn't a big wound. It was just that the sword chi of the sword of destiny was somewhat difficult to deal with. The spirit of the sword of destiny suddenly changed his expression. Yi Shiwen was looking down on him. It's just the beginning. Don't be too proud. The spirit of the sword of destiny roared. In an instant, the treasure aura of heaven and earth gathered into his body. The whole world, the universe, the chaos, everything was sealed. Yi Shiwen suddenly felt as if he had fallen into a swamp. He couldn't move at all, as if there was a force that was tightly binding him. Sword of destiny, lend me your power. One sword to cut the world. The spirit of the sword of destiny chanted in a low voice. The power on his body grew stronger and stronger. The sword aura surged into a pillar and directly rushed into the world. It was as if it could destroy the entire world of the treasure house. This was his hidden technique. Tyrannical. It was really too strong. Yi Shiwen instantly felt that he had been locked by a terrifying sword in tension. However, he wasn't afraid. In his body, the spirit shone brightly, igniting everything. It directly burned the restriction around him into nothingness. I've heard that the sword of destiny contains 3 sword techniques. They are cut the world, cut the chaos, and cut the fate. Let me have a taste of them. Yi Shiwen's figure moved, smashing the void. His chi and blood swept out like a vast ocean, shocking the treasure demons in the world of the treasure house. Many treasure demons were dumbfounded. They couldn't imagine how Yi Shiwen could be so powerful just by relying on his physical body. At the moment when Yi Shiwen moved, the sword of destiny finally moved. It directly slashed towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen didn't dodge. Or rather, he couldn't dodge. This sword had locked the world. No one could escape. They could only face it head-on. This was also the terrifying part of the three swords of destiny. In the past, the former Middle Heavenly Lord relied on these three sword techniques to sweep away all strong enemies. The number of people who could receive the third sword, Cut the Fate, could be counted on one hand. Yi Shiwen had only heard of it. He had never seen it in person. For him, the more tyrannical the sword of destiny was, the better it was. Only then would he be able to rely on it in the upcoming battle. Boom! This sword engulfed everything. The world collapsed. All the rules, laws, rules, and all the fetters were cut into powder by this sword. Chapter 3749. Rumble. The entire world of the treasure vault was violently shaking. Endless power spread out. Countless treasure demons could only tremble under this attack. They were afraid that the shock waves would affect them. But they couldn't help but widen their eyes. They wanted to see clearly what had happened and whether Yi Shiwen had died under this sword. Suddenly, at this moment, a huge hand stretched out from the boundless sword aura and directly crushed the terrifying sword aura into powder. A figure flew out from the void. It was Yi Shiwen. In an instant, the law of speed was evolved to the extreme, and he rushed in front of the sword of destiny's spirit. What? Everyone was shocked. They didn't dare to imagine that someone could be so tyrannical. Even a peak heavenly venerable wouldn't be able to block this sword and would be killed. However, the fact was that Yi Shiwen had grasped the heaven and earth chopping sword and turned it into powder. Moreover, he still had the strength to counterattack. How is this possible? The Sword of Fate's artifact spirit's eyes widened in disbelief. Even during the Fortune Divine Dynasty's Golden Age, when Middle Heavenly Venerables had fought against foreign worlds and ancient eras, the number of people who could block the Sword of Fate could be counted on one's fingers, much less block it so easily. Don't you understand? Cutting the heaven and earth is indeed strong, but you've restricted the Sword of Destiny's performance. This is all you can do. Yi Shiwen roared. At this moment, everything between the heavens and the earth was suppressed by him. His strength made everyone thoroughly terrified. Yi Shiwen blasted out a fist, igniting the void. The terrifying fist energy swept across the entire world and directly blasted in front of the Sword of Destiny's spirit. The Sword of Destiny's spirit spat out a mouthful of blood essence. It could already feel how terrifying Yi Shiwen's fist was, but now it had the opportunity to truly feel the terror of this fist. It proved that its guess was correct. The wisps of Heavenly Venerable's blood essence sprayed between heaven and earth. It was a ghastly sight. The tool spirit of the Sword of Destiny was unconvinced. It was even more indignant. If it had been at its peak, then even with Yi Shiwen's current strength, its sword would have been enough to split Yi Shiwen into two halves. But now, Yi Shiwen was able to inflict heavy injuries on him. Was it really as Yi Shiwen had said? Was he really inferior to the celestial masters of the previous generation? Could it be that his Sword of Destiny was restricted? The tool spirit of the Sword of Fate was sent flying upside down. However, Yi Shiwen didn't let him off. Since the opposite party refused a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, then don't blame him for being impolite. This was the most important method. He had to deal with a half-step ruler. He could not afford to make any mistakes. Yi Shiwen trampled down with his foot. He wanted to trample the tool spirit of the Sword of Fate to death. He then transformed it into the magical power of the Law of World. Seeing this, the artifact spirit of the Sword of Destiny didn't dare to stay any longer. It bit the tip of its tongue and spat a mouthful of blood onto the Sword of Destiny. Instantly, the Sword of Destiny grew larger and larger in the void. Its power also increased along with the wind, reaching an extremely terrifying level. Slash the chaos! The sword of fate transformed into a dreadful attack, and blasted towards Yi Shiwen's foot that was trampling down. Bang! Yi Shiwen's law-form world was broken in an instant with a loud explosion. The sword continued to slash towards Yi Shiwen at an astonishing speed. Its momentum didn't diminish at all. It was as if it was going to split the entire world in half. This was the slash the chaos of the three swords of destiny. It was even more terrifying than the slash of the heaven and earth. If it was used in the chaos, this sword would be even more terrifying. Rumble! The sword once again drowned Yi Shiwen. This is the slash the chaos. The sword of destiny has been here for many years, but I've never seen it use the slash the chaos. No matter what kind of enemy it is, it can be defeated by the slash of destiny. I remember now. Before my master died, I once followed him to conquer the world. At that time, I saw the slash the chaos. Many treasure monsters exclaimed in surprise. But at this moment, two huge golden hands suddenly tore everything apart. They burst out and tore the slash of chaos apart. Yi Shiwen's figure flew out from within. All the treasure monsters were even more shocked. How strong is he? The slash of heaven and earth can't do anything to him. The slash of chaos can't do anything to him either. Could it be that he can only be defeated by the slash of destiny? Rumor has it that the slash of destiny can even kill half-step sovereigns. How can there be such a tyrannical existence in the outside world? And he's not even a peak heavenly master. Even the Lord of Destiny wasn't this strong. No, the Lord of Destiny is definitely not as strong as him in this realm. My God, how can there be such a person in the outside world? Are we really ignorant? After Yi Shiwen tore the sword energy apart, he looked at the sword of destiny and said, "The slash of chaos is not bad. But in your situation, can you still use the slash of chaos a third time?" The power of the three swords of destiny was indeed earth-shattering. If it wasn't for a monster like Yi Shiwen, even a middle heavenly master would most likely be seriously injured by the slash of chaos. If they were hit by the slash of destiny, the consequences would be unimaginable. They might even die. However, to unleash such a powerful attack, one would naturally have to pay a huge price. At this time, the figure of the Sword of Destiny's spirit was clearly a lot more illusory. This was because he was different from Yi Shiwen, who was born with a body. His body was condensed after birth. The two consecutive slashes, coupled with the serious injuries he had suffered from Yi Shiwen before, were already in a state of being an arrow at the end of its flight. Of course I can use the slash of third time. The Sword of Destiny's spirit's whole body was burning. The world was roaring, and a terrifying power was boiling. It even surpassed the state of the slash of chaos. At this time, the Sword of Destiny's spirit hadn't used the slash of chaos a third time. It was already so terrifying before it was used. If it was used, the consequences would simply be unimaginable. You've already reached this point. Do you still want to use the slash of third time? Yi Shiwen said loudly. Of course. As long as I can kill you, everything will be worth it. You are my destiny. After killing you, my cultivation will advance by leaps and bounds. The Sword of Destiny's spirit roared. The Sword of Destiny in his hand finally slashed down, drowning Yi Shiwen in an instant. This was the most terrifying attack, a terrifying attack that was known to be able to kill a half-step ruler. A river of destiny appeared in front of everyone. It was like the manifestation of the heavenly Tao. This river of destiny recorded everyone's existence. Some could break free from life and death, but no one could escape from the river of destiny. Therefore, no one could escape the bombardment of this river of destiny. This was the last move of the three swords of destiny, slash of destiny. It actually drew the river of destiny to attack. It was truly a dazzling attack. Die. The tool spirit of the Sword of Fate roared. He was boiling with excitement. He had poured everything he had into this sword. He had poured all of his faith into it. He wanted to prove that Yi Shiwen wasn't the one who had restricted the Sword of Fate. The power of this sword drowned the heavens and the earth. It was like a cage, imprisoning and destroying everything. However, just when everyone thought that this sword was going to end everything, an intense golden light tore through the river of fate and pierced through everything. Then came a second and then a third. In the blink of an eye, countless beams of golden light tore through the river of fate, reducing it to dust. Countless talisman epochs laws floated in the sky, and Yi Shiwen's figure appeared in these talisman epochs laws. Slash of Destiny is indeed powerful. It actually forced me to use the supreme ancestral symbol. Otherwise, I might have been seriously injured. This sword is said to be able to kill a half-step ruler. It's not a lie, Yi Shiwen faintly said. His body was protected by the supreme ancestral symbol. That sword attack a moment ago was indeed terrifying. Even though he had cultivated the golden body of the virtuous tyrant form, he couldn't block it. Therefore, he had no choice but to use the supreme ancestral symbol. This was already extremely difficult. He didn't even use the supreme ancestral symbol to defeat the Heaven City Lord. He only relied on his own strength to suppress a peak heavenly venerate. If he was a middle heavenly venerate, he would indeed be able to kill a half-step ruler. What? You can actually block the slash of destiny? Impossible, impossible! The Sword of Destiny's spirit roared and spat out a mouthful of blood essence. His entire body was torn apart. The Sword of Destiny's spirit was already an arrow at the end of its flight after using the slash of destiny. Now, he suffered a backlash and his body instantly exploded. At this moment, Yi Shiwen formed a giant hand and grabbed at the Sword of Destiny. Suddenly, another huge hand appeared out of thin air, and it actually wanted to grab the Sword of Destiny before the first one. You want to compete with me in speed? Yi Shiwen sneered and instantly increased his speed. The law of speed manifested in an instant, and then he grabbed the Sword of Destiny in his hand. Buzz! The moment the Sword of Destiny was in Yi Shiwen's hand, it suddenly erupted with countless sword lights, forming a terrifying torrent that slashed at Yi Shiwen. This was to resist Yi Shiwen and prevent him from controlling the Sword of Destiny. However, Yi Shiwen was not afraid at all. He opened his mouth and swallowed the torrent of swordsmanship into his stomach. Then, his palm turned into a huge talisman with the word seal on it, sealing a little bit of the Sword of Destiny's spirit. In an instant, the Sword of Destiny stopped struggling. In the end, it couldn't resist Yi Shiwen's subjugation. Come out. Do you still want to hide? Yi Shiwen looked into the void and said. Chapter 3750. As soon as Yi Shiwen's voice fell, a figure appeared in the void. This figure had just appeared, but it already had the power to suppress the entire world. His body carried a disdainful aura. This kind of rich king's ways aura was even stronger than the Sword of Destiny. Moreover, his body also carried a strong fortune aura. Yi Shiwen was also very familiar with that face. It was the Fortune Heaven Lord. Although Yi Shiwen had never seen the Fortune Heaven Lord, he had seen the original spirit of the Fortune Heaven Lord. This person in front of him looked exactly the same as the Fortune Heaven Lord. Naturally, he couldn't be the Fortune Heaven Lord. Therefore, it was very obvious that he was the tool spirit of the Fortune Treasure Robe. You still dare to come out after watching for so long. You're really brave, Yi Shiwen said. He held the Sword of Fate in his hand, and the power of the supreme ancestral symbol on his body was exuding a terrifying power. At this moment, Yi Shiwen was unprecedentedly tyrannical. On the other side, the tool spirit of the Sword of Fate had recondensed into a solid body. He just stared at Yi Shiwen with a pair of red eyes. To be precise, He stared at the sword of fate in Yi Shiwen's hand. Yi Shiwen turned to look at the tool spirit of the sword of fate and said, "Don't stare at me. I am indeed your doom, but isn't it also an opportunity for you? For you, the sword of fate has indeed made you who you are, but at the same time, it has also restricted you from going further. Your Tao comes from the sword of fate, but to be more precise, it comes from its former master, the former middle heavenly master. You think that you have walked on this path very smoothly, but don't you understand? Every extreme powerhouse is different. If you follow the path of others, you will never reach the peak. Only by breaking free can you possibly reach the peak." The tool spirit of the sword of fate trembled slightly. It seemed to be shocked by Yi Shiwen's words. It wasn't that it hadn't thought about these things, but it was too late to change at that time. Moreover, every successful cultivator was very extreme, and only believed in their own Tao. If Yi Shiwen hadn't defeated it today, Yi Shiwen's words wouldn't have affected it in the slightest. After a long time, its body finally stopped trembling. It already knew that Yi Shiwen was right. Although it was born from the sword of fate, it didn't mean that it should walk the same path as the former middle heavenly master. It restricted the sword of fate, but at the same time, the sword of fate also restricted its development. If it kept walking on this path, it would never reach the end. There would always be someone walking in front of it on this path. His so-called strength was essentially just the strength of the sword of destiny, and he himself could not even withstand a single blow. This was an act of neglecting the essentials and focusing on trifles. Yi Shiwen was very clear about this point, because Yi Mo had once been confused like this. However, Yi Mo had seen through all this very early on. Therefore, he had started to walk on his own path very early on. In the end, he had successfully broken through to the Emperor realm. In terms of cultivation, he had actually surpassed the cultivation of the Devil King. The spirit of the sword of fate couldn't surpass the former middle heavenly master no matter how much it cultivated. This was the essential difference between the two. Although Yi Mo's current cultivation was far inferior to the spirit of the sword of fate, its potential for development was far beyond the former. "Thank you for your guidance. If it wasn't for your guidance, I don't know how many years I would be trapped in this cage. You can take the sword of fate with you. I won't interfere with the sword of fate anymore. You can use the full power of the sword of fate." After speaking, the spirit of the sword of fate took a deep look at Yi Shiwen and the spirit of the good fortune treasure robe. Then, it turned around and left. When it left, it cut off all the connection between itself and the sword of fate. It was the sword of fate that made it, and the sword of fate that made it. However, from today onwards, it would touch this world as an independent cultivator, and not the spirit of the sword of fate. Yi Shiwen nodded. He could feel that all the spirits in the sword of fate had been erased. As long as he imprinted his spirit into it, he would be able to completely control the sword of fate. For him, the sword of fate had given birth to its own spiritual wisdom. This was also a great miracle. He didn't want to erase this miracle. As long as the spirit of the sword of fate was willing to turn back, then he would be willing to let it go and give it a chance. However, if it was still stubborn and obstinate, Yi Shiwen wouldn't mind killing it. Then, Yi Shiwen looked at the spirit of the good fortune treasure robe on the other side and said, "You still dare to come out at this time. You're quite courageous." "How can I talk about being courageous at this time? If I'm not wrong, you should be here for the good fortune treasure robe and the sword of fate. So, what does it matter when I appear?" The spirit of the good fortune treasure robe said in a neither fast nor slow manner. Obviously, it had seen through everything. Yi Shiwen would definitely find it. So, what difference would it make if it appeared at any time? In fact, it should have appeared earlier. At least, it could have stopped Yi Shiwen from attacking the sword of fate. "I should have appeared earlier. It's a bit stressful to deal with you alone now," the spirit of the good fortune treasure robe said faintly. "Didn't you hear what I said just now? I don't know how much higher your starting point is compared to an ordinary creature, but this is your advantage, and also your shackles. If you can't find your own path, then you can only stay in their shadows forever, Yi Shiwen said. You don't have to say these words because I'm not the sword of fate. I won't be swayed by your words. The good fortune treasure robe continued. As you said, everyone has their own path. Every extreme powerhouse has their own different path. Since you're not me, how do you know that my path won't work? Yi Shiwen immediately understood. The spirit of the good fortune treasure robe was far more stubborn than the spirit of the sword of fate. His Tao was stronger, and he had even gradually comprehended his own path. So, it was impossible to convince him. Just like the Lord of Good Fortune, heaven couldn't change Yi Shiwen's Tao. They had already reached the peak of perfection, far beyond everyone's imagination. However, Yi Shiwen didn't intend to preach. It would be best if the other party could give him some pointers. Since he couldn't point it out, he could only defeat the other party. He couldn't retreat from this battle. There was no way out. Do you think you can stop me? If you retreat now and hand over the good fortune treasure robe, I can let you go. I have no way out. You'd better not test my patience, Yi Shiwen said without any trace of politeness. If you want it, then do it yourself. For him, the sword of fate has become a burden because he can never surpass the original middle heavenly master. But I'm different. I still have a long way to go. Even if I want to turn back, it's definitely not now. The spirit of the good fortune treasure robe said faintly. He was right. In any case, a middle heavenly master couldn't compare to the Lord of Good Fortune heaven. So, his path was much longer than the sword of fate. If that's the case, then I have no reason to hold back. I'll tell you now that your way of thinking is really ridiculous, Yi Shiwen said. In an instant, he moved. With a bang, all the magic power in his body was burning. It directly manifested many strange phenomena. At the same time, he punched through the world. The world of the treasure house trembled. Countless treasure demons looked from afar. They trembled and didn't dare to approach. They could only watch Yi Shiwen erupt like a god. The stars in the world revolved with him. The fist pierced through the world and directly bombarded the front of the good fortune treasure robe. The terrible astral wind turned into a terrible tornado. The cloves on the spirit of the good fortune treasure robe fluttered in the wind. However, the spirit of the good fortune treasure robe didn't move. Soon, Yi Shiwen discovered that his fist seemed to have entered a quagmire. Just moving it was already very difficult. All the suns, moons, and stars in the world were blooming with the light of the Great Way. However, it was useless. This fist couldn't move forward. In terms of attack, I may not be comparable to the sword of fate. However, in terms of defense, I am far stronger than him. This is also the reason why you came looking for me. But it's useless. I may not be able to hurt you, but you can't do anything to me either. I'm already in an invincible position, the spirit of the good fortune treasure robe said indifferently. His tone was neither fast nor slow. He had already calculated everything. This was also the fundamental reason why he had dared to appear in front of Yi Shiwen. He had already calculated everything. Are you sure I can't do anything to you? Yi Shiwen roared. On his body, countless golden gung qi bloomed with a terrible light. In an instant, it directly broke the domain around the spirit of the good fortune treasure robe. The golden gung ancestral qi was unparalleled in attack. It was vividly reflected at this time. Yi Shiwen's fist broke through the domain of the good fortune's treasured robe's tool spirit in an instant. This fist disintegrated the previous one and swept out a dreadful frenzy. The power of 6 paths of reincarnation was added to his body. Then, he bombarded the tool spirit of the good fortune's treasured robe with his fist. Clang! There was another loud roar. Then, Yi Shiwen saw his fist directly hit an inch away from the spirit of the good fortune treasure robe. It couldn't move forward anymore. At this moment, an ancient treasured robe appeared on his body. The treasured robe was engraved with densely packed ancient incantations and traces of laws. Even the aura of the Great Way was being released, and it directly blocked Yi Shiwen's punch. This was the good fortune treasure robe. It wrapped the spirit in it. Chapter 37:51. Under the protection of the good fortune treasured garment, the good fortune treasured garment's spirit opened its eyes and said, "I've already said that you can't do anything to me. You can't break my defense either. I'm different from the sword of destiny. If his offense is unparalleled, then my defense is invincible. In the past, the good fortune heavenly lord relied on my help to defeat many strong enemies. There were even half-step sovereigns, let alone you." The good fortune treasured garment's spirit opened its eyes. They were profound, but without a trace of emotion. It just looked at Yi Shiwen indifferently, as if he was looking at an irrelevant person. "It's really tricky," Yi Shiwen said, "but it's impossible for me to give up. You were the one who attacked before. It's my turn now." The tool spirit of the good fortune's treasured clothes attacked Yi Shiwen as soon as he finished speaking. His physical body was naturally inferior to Yi Shiwen's virtuous gilded body. However, he wasn't afraid of a physical fight under the protection of the good fortune's treasured clothes. Universe Creation Palm. The good fortune treasured garment's spirit directly slammed his palm down. It was as if the world and the universe were violently reversed, and then it smashed down towards Yi Shiwen. "You actually know Universe Creation Palm," Yi Shiwen said. "I've followed the good fortune heavenly lord for many years. What's so strange about knowing Universe Creation Palm?" The good fortune treasured garment's spirit didn't seem to care. In his opinion, he had followed the good fortune heavenly lord for many years. He himself was the evolution of the good fortune heavenly lord's spirit, and had developed his own spiritual wisdom. What's so strange about him knowing Universe Creation Palm? This was an inheritance that came from his own body, not something that he had learned. "That's true. Then take my palm, Universe Creation Palm." Yi Shiwen also slammed his palm down. Although he didn't burn his king-level dragon vein, his current cultivation was already terrifying enough. When his palm slammed down, its power was equally terrifying. In fact, it was even more terrifying and powerful than the good fortune cosmic palm that was used by the good fortune treasure robe. Boom! The fortune universe palm of both sides collided with each other. It was exactly the same, but it was equally terrifying. It seemed as if the entire primal chaos had just been born, and the world was about to be reshaped. This was the most frightening thing for many of the treasure demons in the distance. In fact, it was even more terrifying than when Yi Shiwen had battled against the Sword of Destiny. The two of them were evenly matched. They did not move at all, clashing once more, allowing the palm force from both sides to turn into a torrent that swept through the surroundings. Yi Shiwen had practiced the virtuous gilded tyrant body. So, these astral winds and storms were useless against his body. Moreover, the tool spirit of the good fortune's treasured clothes was protected by the good fortune's treasured clothes. So, all the astral winds would naturally turn into nothingness. So, they couldn't hurt him. Yi Shiwen had already discovered that the tool spirit of the good fortune's treasured robe was also using the universe creation palm. However, it was obviously not on the same level as the one he was using. The universe creation palm used by the good fortune's treasured robe was obviously not the complete version. However, the one he had learned was the true complete version. Yi Shiwen thought about it for a while, and understood that when the good fortune's treasured clothes refined the good fortune's treasured clothes, Lord of Good Fortune was only a half-step sovereign-level existence. So, the spirit that he had imprinted in the good fortune's treasured clothes was only at that level. At that time, the universe creation palm was obviously not perfect. It was not comparable to the universe creation palm that Yi Shiwen had learned later. that was left behind after the good fortune's treasured clothes had reached the sovereign level. Although the good fortune robe was Heavenly Lord Fortune Creation's personal Tao item, he later gave it up for some unknown reason. Instead, he refined the good fortune creation scroll and left the good fortune treasure robe in this treasury. However, Yi Shiwen also discovered that the defensive power of the good fortune treasured robe was indeed amazing. He was stronger than the tool spirit of the good fortune treasured robe, whether it was his martial power or the might of the good fortune universe palm. However, the excess palm power would be absorbed by the good fortune treasured robe's tool spirit when it fell on the body of the good fortune treasured robe. It couldn't do anything to the tool spirit of the good fortune treasured robe. This was exactly what the good fortune treasure robe said before. It was already in an invincible position. No matter how Yi Shiwen attacked, it was impossible to hurt it. Although it might be difficult for it to hurt Yi Shiwen, who had cultivated the virtuous tyrant form golden body, it was enough to give Yi Shiwen a headache. In fact, the tool spirit of the good fortune precious robe could also use the good fortune universe palm. It could be said that it had both offensive and defensive abilities. However, it was a pity that Yi Shiwen also had both offensive and defensive abilities. In fact, he was even stronger than Yi Shiwen. Again, Yi Shiwen wasn't discouraged. He directly rushed forward again and fought with the tool spirit of the good fortune treasured robe. The tool spirit of the good fortune treasured robe also seemed to be boiling with fighting spirit. It relied on the amazing defensive power of the good fortune treasured robe. It simply didn't care. It didn't defend and only attacked. It let Yi Shiwen's attacks fall on its body. Yi Shiwen was the same. He also fought in the same way. He didn't have much defense at all. He let the attacks fall on his virtuous tyrant form golden body. It couldn't do anything to Yi Shiwen. The two of them directly displayed a pure offensive battle. This shocking scene left many treasure demons dumbfounded. Whether it was the shocking defensive methods displayed by both sides, or the reckless offensive methods displayed by both sides, they all shocked them. A whole new world was revealed to everyone. The physical cultivation was also equally terrifying after it had been enhanced to the extreme. Give up. You can't defeat me. Everything you're doing now is a waste of time, said the good fortune treasured robe calmly. Its eyes seemed to be able to see through everything in the world. In terms of the spiritual power of both sides, a battle of this level might even last until the end of time. After all, their spiritual power recovery speed was too fast. Waste of time? I don't think so. Eat my sword first. Yi Shiwen suddenly grabbed a long sword from the void. What else could it be if it wasn't the sword of fate? So what if it's the sword of fate? Even the sword of fate can't break my good fortune treasured robe, roared the tool spirit of the good fortune treasured robe when it saw the sword of fate that Yi Shiwen had grabbed. Is that so? Eat my sword first. Slash the heaven and earth. Yi Shiwen's body bloomed with countless rays of sword principle. The treasure energy of the entire treasure house world was gathering towards his body. His body was like a huge whirlpool that could absorb all the treasure energy. He wasn't doing nothing when he was fighting the tool spirit of the good fortune treasured robe. On the contrary, he was refining the sword of fate while fighting. Without the interference of the tool spirit of the good fortune treasured robe, it was much easier for him to refine the sword of fate. However, he couldn't just imprint his spirit into it. That would only be considered as a preliminary mastery of the sword of fate. At most, he would only be able to display the most basic power of the sword of fate. In terms of offense, it might not be much different from the gung metal ancestral chi in his hand. His original intention of finding the sword of fate would be wasted. The real difficulty was the 3 swords of fate that were imprinted in the sword of fate. It was a terrifying move that could kill half-step sovereigns. Only by comprehending the 3 swords of fate could he display the full power of the sword of fate. Only then would he truly have the ability to kill half-step sovereigns. After burning hundreds of king-class dragon veins, he had only comprehended the most basic move of the three swords of fate, slash the heaven and earth. Even so, it was enough. Although it was only a basic move, the foundation depended on whose foundation it was. Boom! The sword directly slashed down, slashing towards the tool spirit of the good fortune treasured robe at lightning speed. The tool spirit of the good fortune treasured robe couldn't escape at all. Yi Shiwen's speed was too fast, and he directly sealed off the entire space. It was like he was in a deep swamp. There was nowhere to hide. At this moment, he could already feel the terrifying pressure that Yi Shiwen had felt before. This sword instantly drowned him, and the terrifying sword light filled the entire space. Slash the heaven and earth. He actually recreated slash the heaven and earth in such a short time, and it's even stronger than me. The tool spirit of the sword of fate couldn't help but be stunned when he saw this scene. Although he had already decided to not care, he couldn't help but be stunned when he felt slash the heaven and earth again on the battlefield. Although he was a tool spirit, it took him a long time to master slash the heaven and earth after he developed his own intelligence. After that, it took him a long time to gradually master slash the chaos and slash the fate. Now Yi Shiwen had just seized the sword of fate, and he actually slashed the sword of fate. What kind of heaven-defying comprehension is this? He didn't know that Yi Shiwen had a mysterious space, and could only think that this was Yi Shiwen's comprehension. He couldn't help but be stunned. He only felt that it wasn't very shameful to lose to such a monster. After all, he was a monster. Perhaps there weren't many people who could compare with him since ancient times. At least, his master, the former Middle Heavenly Master, was far less powerful than Yi Shiwen when he was in this realm. The sword light dissipated, and everyone only saw that the tip of the sword of fate directly tore the defense of the good fortune treasured robe. Although it was only for a moment, it was enough. For the good fortune treasured robe, its defense had completely collapsed. This was just the beginning. Soon, its treasured robe was densely covered with all kinds of cracks, and then the barrier collapsed in an instant. This is the time. Yi Shiwen saw the tool spirit protected by the good fortune treasured robe, and this was also the best opportunity. Of course, he wouldn't let go of this opportunity. He directly stepped out and slashed down with his sword. Puff! The tool spirit of the good fortune treasured robe widened his eyes. He still couldn't believe that he was defeated like this. He actually died like this. His body was cut in half, and it burned fiercely. After a while, it was burned to ashes, and his good fortune treasured robe quickly fell into Yi Shiwen's hands. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.